Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Analyzing Finance with Nick live stream. I try to adjust the camera angle to make me a little bit more centered than I usually am for these. So let me know what your thoughts are on for that. And for today's live stream, we are doing a special where I break down what insights I gained from the tour that I've been doing for the last year and a half or so. Like on your guys' request, I started to do an Analyzing Finance with Nick tour where I went across the United States along with 2 stops in Canada and Australia and 3 stops in Europe and hosted a series of meetups. Some were smaller, more informal events, while others were major speaking events with multiple speakers. And I gained a lot of interesting insights about the economics, about the US, and about class and a variety of other things that I am going to talk about in today's live stream. Just as a note, if you want to make sure that your questions get answered, please leave a super chat because I get a flood of comments from you guys in the live stream, and a lot of them are actually very insightful questions that I unfortunately miss because they just get lost in the sea of the conversation that goes on here. Also, the other thing to note too is I forgot what I was going to say actually. Oh yeah, I can't. Nothing I say in these live streams is investment advice. Please do your own investment research, and if you do want to talk to me about a specific thing related to financial markets or investments or more personalized advice, feel free to contact me directly through my consultation form. But without further ado, let us get started with this conversation about the insights that I gained really from the tour. First, I've been now around the world. I've gone to, not because of this tour, but just in my life in general, about, depending on what you count as a country, anywhere from 46 to 49 countries in the world. And I have gone to now all 50 US states. That's actually what the Kansas City meetup was for, was a celebration of visiting all 50 US states. And there's a lot of variance really between different parts of the country. First thing I have to say is that the whole red state, blue state thing is not as dramatic as portrayed in the media. I've been to cities in the most red states in America, and they're in urban downtowns have the same demographic of people that you would expect in a place like Seattle or San Francisco. So thank you, Legal Automation, for the Bloomberg terminal. I would like to come visit Singapore. And somebody asked me in the comments, and really the terms of me coming to Singapore is if I can get a turnout of over 100 of you guys to come to a formal speaking event or mini conference in Singapore. So that's kind of the number. Also, if you have a better suggestion for a restaurant in Singapore other than no signboard seafood for the private dinner, I would appreciate it. I don't even know if no signboard seafood is still in Singapore, but I remember they had really good crab. But back to the red state, blue state thing. So yeah, I mean, and most of the suburban areas in America also are purplish to bright red, and with the exception of maybe the San Francisco Bay Area and Seattle. And then the rural areas are all kind of red. And even in California, you still have 40% of people who vote for the Republican Party. And in places like Texas, you have 40% of the population who votes for Democrats. So this idea that you're going to have some balkanization is just not really that evident, just because there's not like a critical monolithic voting block in enough different parts of the country and enough population centers to really create like centers of each faction. It's very different in a place like Canada, which I talked about in my Toronto speech, where Alberta does vote in a unilateral way, one direction, and Quebec votes in a unilateral direction the other way. And so you do have basis for secessionism that is more geographically defined than in the United States. So there's also just a lot of regional cultural variance. Like a lot of the differences that I experienced on my travels were more local regional cultures versus like the differences between, say, like San Francisco and New York, based on regional subcultures, was a lot more than like what partisan divides would indicate. Same thing with like the difference between, say, like Dallas and Atlanta and Phoenix as well. And this whole tour also kind of verified my theory about the prosperity theory of politics, which basically means that like when a city or a metro area does something right, they gain an economic prosperity. And with that gain in economic prosperity, it tends to attract certain crowds that tend to vote for suboptimal policies. It's either people in lower income brackets or younger people with more idealistic views on socialism and the welfare state come to these places and are like, you know what, the economy is doing well. We can afford to give some back to those in need, or be a little more lenient on crime because those people are struggling. Whatever the reasons, they'll say they'll vote these policies, and these same policies will be economically uncompetitive, and the result will be the city becomes more economically uncompetitive, and those same young people and economically disadvantaged people who move to that city for more economic opportunities will now move to the next city with economic opportunities. And then with the city getting hollowed out, especially with the younger and more transient crowd leaving, those who remain vote for more practical economic and crime related policies and get the city back on track. Like, we've seen this happen multiple cycles in the US. Like, it's happened in Detroit, and it's happening now in LA and San Francisco. Those are on the way at the trough, on their way up from the trough. Whereas you see other cities that are growing really rapidly, like Dallas and Atlanta, that are starting to turn the other way because they're reaching the level of prosperity where the politics changes, as I explained in the prosperity theory. And it's a very real phenomenon, and I've noticed this. Like, I think Georgia, for example, is going to become a pretty solid blue state within 10 years, probably less than that, because of the prosperity theory of politics and the inflows of people who are moving to Atlanta, and how their voting patterns are likely to progress. Like, the only reason Florida seems to be immune to this is because there's a lot more retirees who move there and tend to bring a different ideological profile. And Florida also went out of its way to pass more socially conservative policies that basically made it very unattractive for progressives to move to their cities, even if it made economic sense. Whereas Georgia had the good economic policy without the unpopular social conservative policies to scare progressive business owners and progressive young professionals from moving there. There's also generally a north-south axis for politics. Like, the further south your city is, on a population density adjusted basis, it will be more right-wing. like San Diego, Orange County, Phoenix, Dallas, Houston, and the Tampa and Miami and Vegas are some of the most right-leaning metropolitan areas in the United States when you adjust for population density. Whereas, like, you go further north, you get way more progressive cities adjusted for population density, like Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, Boston, New York, Chicago. Uh, it seems to have there seems to be a north-south divide in terms of how the partisan split is for cities. Um, I don't really know why that is the case. That more northern latitudes, big cities tend to have more progressive politics, especially on social issues. But it's an observable pattern that I noticed in big cities as a whole. Um, Nick, my favorite YouTuber to watch in the morning, supply chain engineering guy in Salt Lake City here. SLC's economic story is wildly underrated. Yeah, the Utah is booming. They just got the Utah Mammoth from Arizona, and they are doing a lot of stuff that's been pretty solid on economic policy, and it has a lot of um, top human capital. I think a lot of it has to do just with certain local cultural things that people don't really want to touch, and so that's why I don't think it's not as talked about. Um, and then the other thing I'll talk about is the audience profile of attendees. Like, generally, the people who have come to the meetups, I've been very impressed by. It tends to be a very educated crowd. It tends to be one who's either in the professional classes or entrepreneurs who are starting or have started um, businesses. Uh, Age wise, the people who have typically come have been around like 25 to 40. You have like occasionally a few college students who showed up to meetups on the younger end, and on the older end, there's maybe like 10% who are Gen X. Um, but in general, it's mostly like a millennial and older Gen Z crowd who has been coming to the events. It's probably gender balance is like 85-15 approximately. Um, and it's been professionally, again, it's a lot of people in the specific fields tend to be finance, tech, real estate, entrepreneurs, or attorneys, who are like the top professions who have tended to come to my events. A lot of AI engineers too. That I'd put them, but that's in the tech category, but particularly a lot of AI engineers tend to like the content, which I guess is relevant because I talk a lot about how AI impacts finance. Um, and yeah, overall, I've been very impressed by the crowds who've come to my events. And I actually can go into the data if you guys are curious about like which are the cities that tend to have you guys are watching are from. I downloaded all of my analytics from YouTube and I put it into Claude to basically show me like who's viewing me from where, not just what country, but what cities as well. And based off of that, I've got an idea of where you guys are. This, along with the polling data and the attendance at the meetup, I generally have a good idea of where you guys live. Um, Number one city in terms of viewership was New York City. And that includes all the New Jersey and Connecticut suburbs. That's where our largest, it's not surprising because New York is the capital of global finance. But that is number one in terms of geography. Number two is Los Angeles plus Orange County, California. If you separate LA, it moves down outside the top five. But if you merge it with Orange County, it's the second biggest market for the channel. And which also makes sense because that's my home market. I'm from Orange County, California. So a lot of people who know me personally probably watch the channel, and a lot of people who want to hear from somebody who's, I guess, geographically in a similar position as them, maybe also want to hear from me too. Um, Number three was Toronto, Ontario, which is actually kind of surprised since it's not in the United States. But Toronto was the third biggest city in the world for all of Analyzing Finance with Nick, and it ranked, I think, numbers 5 or 6 in terms of attendees to the meetup. But it was in the middle of the top 10 as well, which also was quite a bit of surprise. Um, Number four in terms of this market is Chicago, which Chicago was the third most attended city for the meetups. So um, it's also somewhat in line on that front as well. Um, and then at number five, in terms of the biggest cities, is the San Francisco Bay Area, which was San Francisco was the largest attended meetup in terms of individual head count. So yeah, which again, I mean, is kind of surprising, but it's not surprising. The top city for viewers already answered that. It's New York City is the top city for viewers. Um, yeah, number one is New York, number two is LA, number three is Toronto, number four is Chicago, and number five is San Francisco. And then we go to number six was Seattle, Washington, which Seattle is maybe a top 14 cities in America. It's out, I think it's outside the top 10 for metro areas. So it is surprising that um what's it called? Seattle was number six. Um Number seven was DFW, the Dallas Fort Worth area, um, which I was just last week. We had a great event in Dallas. Um, that's probably one of the nicer venues I rented for space that I did on the trip. So I'm getting better at picking those out as the tours progressed. But yeah, DFW is number seven. Um, Number eight is Boston. Um, in terms of my audience, um, yeah, I mean, Boston's very well educated. Boston was the biggest turnout I had in last year's tour outside of Southern California. So yeah, it's also, and also that's where I did my speech about the enrollment cliff, because it's very college sensitive. Like 30% of the population of Boston is an active college student. So number eight was Boston. Number nine is London in the UK, which we will be going to as part of a future international tour in 2027. And then number 10, which is surprisingly high, and it's number 10 in the world, and number nine in the USA, is Atlanta, Georgia. And Atlanta, I generally was the biggest surprise of this tour as a whole. It was tied for third with Chicago for most attendance, I think, of any city that we had. And it was also, it's the ninth biggest market, even though Atlanta is, I think, smaller than the ninth biggest metro area in the US or in the world, really, for sure. Like if you include like London um and Toronto, if you strip out those, then it would put Atlanta at number nine. Houston is the biggest market we have yet to go to, but I am planning a Houston meetup in November. So I think Houston is like fourth overall, but I didn't really include it because I haven't had an event yet. But yeah, that's those are the top 10, is basically, it's in the US at least, is um New York, LA, Chicago, Houston, San Francisco, Seattle, Dallas, Boston, Atlanta, and the number 10 is Washington D.C. I did go to DC last year. I'm avoiding DC this year because of the whole midterm election season, and I think people probably have too much going on to have time for an Analyzing Finance with Nick meetup. So I will go to DC on a non-election year. So I'll probably find a time to visit in 2027. Um, And then number 11 is Philadelphia, in terms of most watched. And no, I've never been to Baton Rouge. I would like to do a curated experience at LSU if that would be fun, or an LSU football game or something like that. But I've never been to Baton Rouge. I've only been to New Orleans in Louisiana. But yeah, that's and then if you want to wrap out the rest of the top 20 in the US, it'd be Austin at number 12, San Diego at 13, Arizona at 14, the Phoenix Metro, Miami Metro, just this whole South Florida from West Palm all the way down to um, the Keys is number 15, Las Vegas is 16, Denver is 17, which we'll be going to in August. Charlotte is now the 18th biggest market in the US. Number 19 is Orlando, and 20 is Minneapolis, St. Paul. And the smallest market that we went to for the tour, other than Fresno, which I have family reasons why I was there, was Tampa at number 27. Was the smallest market that we went for the tour domestically in the US. Um, and I can now, if you guys are curious, I could also break this down for international numbers. Um, Number one internationally is Toronto, as I've said before. It's third overall. Number two is London, which is about eighth overall for us worldwide. Number three is Sydney, Australia, which is about the same audience we have for Atlanta, actually. So it's in about top 10 if it was an American city. Number four would be Melbourne, Australia, which would be like the same audience equivalent to a city like Austin, Texas, in terms of a similar size audience we have in Melbourne. So one of the guys in the comment asked me about my thoughts on Melbourne, Australia. I've never been. I know they have the Aussie Open there. I've heard it's kind of like the San Francisco and Seattle of Australia combined, but based on what Aussies have told me about it. If I did go back to Australia, I would like to go to a meetup there, but I literally was just in Australia in February, so it might be a while. So when it comes to Melbourne, then yeah, thank you for the good review, Andrew. In Chicago, yeah, I thought I had a great time at the Chicago meetup. You'll see my video from the speech in a couple weeks on the channel. Number 5 in terms of international cities is Singapore. And like the viewership of Singapore is about the same as we have in Miami metro area. So like it would be, if it was the US, it'd probably be like the 20th biggest. If we count American cities, it'd be the 20th biggest worldwide audience. So I know somebody asked me about that. And then number 6 is Montreal, which is about a similar size audience to say like Denver for us. And I will do a Montreal and Quebec City meetup. Those two combined will be my celebration for the 150,000 subscriber benchmark. So once we hit that, I will do a special Quebec tour. And that will probably be the next time I go to Canada. But we're far away from 150,000 subscribers. So that might be a while. But if you're a French Canadian who wants me to go there, share the channel and get us up to 150K. After that, the next biggest city we have is Vancouver, which is about the same size as like Tampa in terms of our audience size overall. It's number 7th in terms of non-US cities. Number 8 was surprisingly Nairobi, Kenya. I know they're an English-speaking country, but I didn't realize I had such a big audience. Maybe do Analyzing Finance with Nick Safari in Nairobi, Kenya. Number 9 in terms of international cities, which we did go to, is Calgary, Alberta. Maybe it will get more of an audience after my recent video about potential Albertan secession, but Calgary is number 9 for international. And number 10 is also another metro that we did on this channel is Brisbane / the Gold Coast of Australia. No, I've never been to Nairobi. But it would be kind of fun to do. So yeah, number 10 would be is Brisbane slash the Gold Coast of Australia. Then if I'm going to do the rest of the top 20, number 11 is Cape Town. Number 12 is Lagos, Nigeria. Number 13 is Bangkok. Number 14 is Zurich, Switzerland. Number 15 is Paris. 16 is Hong Kong. 17 is Dublin, Ireland. Number 18 is Warsaw, Poland. Number 19 is Berlin. And number 20 is Perth, Australia. So those are the top 20 international cities. And like it's mostly Europe and Africa, actually. Our biggest one out in Latin America is Sao Paulo, which is 23rd internationally. And if it was to be for US, it would be about the same size as our audience in Indianapolis, Indiana. All right. Speaking of traveling around, should the government have bailed out Spirit? They blocked the 2022 JetBlue merger that would have saved them. You can argue they were owed a bailout. No, the government should not be bailing out Spirit. Spirit was trying to run an airline that I can see what they were trying to do is be as cheap and affordable as possible, but they did that at the expense of having timely flights and other like basic quality of life issues that even budget travelers couldn't overlook. And so good riddance to Spirit. I mean, their airport slots will be opened up by other airlines and their planes will be bought by other airlines. So I don't think people will really be missing out. I don't really believe in bailouts, especially for airlines that consistently have a history of failing. And people say, oh no, affordable flying is going to go away because of the decline of Spirit. No, it's not going to go away because there are other budget airlines out there. There are Frontier, for one. You have Breeze, which is a newer budget airline started by the former founder of JetBlue. And there will be other upstarts. Everybody always tries to start the affordable budget airline. And perhaps Ryanair might even expand into the US. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on Spirit. The world will just be fine. I think the high fuel prices were kind of the last kind of knife in the coffin, but it was already a dead man walking before all of this. They've been struggling for a while. Yeah, that's I personally have only flown one Spirit flight in my life. That was from Chicago to Myrtle Beach back in like 2019, I believe. And that was because it's the only direct flight from Chicago to Myrtle Beach that was available. Yeah, but so I never really was much of a Spirit flyer, to be quite honest. So that kind of wraps up in terms of like engagement, in terms of like the international, in terms of tour attendance. The number one city we had in terms of attendance internationally was Toronto. Toronto would have been a top 5 somewhere between number 5 and 10 if I count US cities. So like that was by far our largest audience outside the US, and the private dinner was really good there too at this Portuguese restaurant called Via Norte, which I would recommend if you ever are in Little Portugal in Toronto. Number 2 for international cities was Zurich, Switzerland, actually. We had a really good crowd in Zurich. I'm planning an even bigger and better event in Zurich in 2027, which we'll talk more about when I announce the international tour later on this live stream. Number 3 for international was Sydney, Australia. And then the 4th and 5th biggest audiences internationally were Amsterdam at 4th, and 5th was I think probably tied with the Gold Coast and Calgary. Yeah, Rome we didn't really was actually a pretty small event. But yeah, I mean, in general, I'm actually just pleasantly surprised by the international crowd. And Portuguese food is a thing in Toronto. Like Toronto is a great city if you want to find ethnic food of like more obscure countries that are not as easy to find in like LA or New York. Like example would be like Turkish food, Portuguese food, um, the more niche countries that you don't really think about when you think of a country's food. Toronto has got you covered. Um, and then in terms of the other thing I'm going to talk about before I get to your Q&A is I'm going to rank US states. I'm not going to do a whole 1 to 50 overall ranking because the problem is a lot of these states are all in the same bucket. And maybe because I'm an American patriot and I love my country, it's hard for me to bash most of the states in America. So it was easy to rank the bottom 5. It was fairly easy to rank the top 10, but like 11 through 44 is kind of a giant hodgepodge, honestly, for ranking the states in America. And so as a result, I'm not going to try to split split nails on trying to figure out what is the 12th versus the 13th best state to visit. I do consider Puerto Rico to be the US, but I don't consider it one of the 50 states. I've never been to Puerto Rico. However, I am going to try to do a Puerto Rico meetup in Dorado, Puerto Rico for the 250,000 subscriber benchmark celebration. So, any Puerto Ricans or people who want to go on vacation to Puerto Rico and have an Analyzing Finance with Nick meetup, we're going to do that if we break 250,000 subscribers on the channel. Um, so, now that I'm going to rank the states in different categories, I'm going to rank the top 10 states I've been to for visiting, um, top 10 for living, top 10 for economic opportunity. Like if you're trying to build a career as a young person. Um, and then I will do the bottom 5 states just overall. I'll also do the top 10 I'm least likely to return to. And I'm going to do also the states that I'm most likely and most want to return to. And then I'm also going to talk about like my future travel goals. Um, and then the other thing we're going to do on this channel, so please write these questions in now, is I'm going to review cities. I'm waiting for that for the end. So please write whatever city in America or internationally that you want me to give you my honest review about from a tourist or an economic perspective. And if I have spent enough time there to have an insightful opinion, I will give you my unfiltered opinion of your city. So put it in the comments. And if you want to make sure that I get it, please leave a super chat because sometimes things get lost in the noise. But first, top 10 states for visiting, like as a tourist. Number 1, I would say, is Hawaii. If you have not been to Hawaii, it's probably the most relaxing place to go on a vacation. The time zone makes it very hard to catch up with work. It's the weather is warm and the water is warm and it just has this very laid back aloha vibe. And if you like seafood and pork, the food is good. And if you like surfing or snorkeling or scuba or any sort of water sports, it's really fun. The beaches are nice. I can't not recommend Hawaii. I've been there at least 7 times in my life, and I plan my ideal life if I had the time to do it is I would go like at least once every year, if not once every 3 months. So Hawaii, number 1 for vacation. Number 2 is California. I live in California, so I am heavily biased on that. But California just offers a lot more geographic diversity than really anywhere else in America. You can have like Mediterranean climate on the beach, and if you're trying to get away from like extreme heat or extreme cold, California is a good place to do that. You have the desert, like in the Coachella Valley, like the Palm Springs, Palm Desert, Indian Wells, etc. You've got San Diego, which has not just beach culture, but a lot of unique tourist things such as SeaWorld, the Safari Park, um, like Petco Park, etc. Then you have San Francisco if you want the more like cooler weather and the more historical side of the West Coast. Um, and you want the redwoods and things like that. You have the forests up in the Muir Woods area and in the Santa Cruz area too. And if you want skiing and snow, you got Tahoe. So California can offer you a little bit of everything for your style of tourism. So I'd put California at number 2 for visitors. Number 3 is Florida. Florida also has nice beaches. You kind of need to stay. The problem with Florida that I put below California and Hawaii is that there is like a hurricane season and it's very humid in the summer. And it's not very pleasant to be there in that time of the year. And Florida does have some pearl drift element to it that a lot of people don't like. That is even present in the supposedly exclusive tourist areas where it's not the same problems like you'd get in Hawaii or the upscale parts of California. Um, but I'd still rank it third for tourism in the US. Number 4, I would rank is South Carolina. I think South Carolina is very underrated as a tourist destination because it's got good golf. It's got fairly mild climate and warm weather. Charleston is a really cool historical city that's very walkable. Hilton Head Island is a really good like resort style place to go. I'm not so much a fan of Myrtle Beach, but Charleston and Hilton Head and the Kiowa and all those places more than make up for it. Um, the next these next ones are kind of more dependent on your type of trip. They're not as appealing to everybody as like I'd say the top 4 are, but I'm going to keep going. The next one, at number 5, I'd put is Arizona. But Arizona, the caveat is you go in the winter. Arizona is my favorite golf state in America. You have an availability of really nice, but especially for the quality, very affordable golf courses in Arizona. Um, you can get out of the cold in the winter. Um, I mean, Metro Phoenix is a good event town too. Like they have the Fiesta Bowl. They have like a national championship games occasionally for college sports, Final Four, Super Bowls. So if you like that kind of stuff, there's good restaurant scene, and they have really nice resorts there. And like especially if you like very high end swimming pools and things like that. So I would put Arizona. That's number 5. At number 6, I would say for tourist states would be New York, mainly because of New York City. For all of its faults, New York is a little bit stressful and chaotic for me to want and high tax for me to want to live there. But it's a fun place to visit as a tourist. Like for 3 or 4 days every other year, I would enjoy going to New York City. Um, and New York is like the world capital for a lot of cultural things, and you can find just about any sort of urban amenity you want in Manhattan, and it's all walkable too, especially during the daytime. I wouldn't really recommend the other boroughs that much from a tourist perspective, but Manhattan's fun. So I put New York at number 6. Number 7, I put Illinois because I like Chicago, and this is a caveat. It's got to be during between May to October. Like otherwise, the weather is just too cold to be enjoyable. But I would say Illinois is number 7 because Chicago's a fun city to visit. Number 8, I'd put Montana. If you haven't been to Montana, I would really recommend checking it out. It's called Big Sky Country for a reason because it's just so open air and untouched by civilization. Like you can you can ride a bike on like along a highway because traffic's not really an issue for most of it. And this is even Bozeman, which is like the trendy and busy city. It's right next to Yellowstone. So if you want to see all that, it's right there. They have good river rafting, particularly in Big Sky. And if you like paleontology, they actually have some of the world's best dinosaur bone exhibits if you want something more indoor. But it's mainly go to Montana for outdoor things like horseback riding, river rafting, hiking, all that kind of stuff. Then the next place I would do, which is number 9 on the list, would be Alaska. I think Alaska is the most underrated state to visit. Alaska is kind of like a more bigger and more rugged version of like the Yellowstone region and Pacific Northwest combined. You have Denali National Park. You have all the exotic animals there in Alaska that are common for North America. They have very good seafood, particularly crab, if you like that. Alaskan cruises are fun because you can see glaciers crack and fall into the water in real time. And if in the summer you have 24-hour sun, so you can play golf at like 10 o'clock at night and be done at 4 in the morning. And it's very hard to replicate that experience anywhere else. And it just feels like almost like a different world up there. And again, the caveat for Alaska is you go during the summer because otherwise it's too cold and too dark. And then the last one is Michigan, particularly the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The Great Lakes are really fun. It's like swimming in an ocean without all the dirtiness of salt water. You can go jet skiing at really high speeds. Mackinac Island is like a Catalina or a Martha's Vineyard, but in the middle of, I think it's either Lake Michigan or Lake Huron, but it's like right where they meet. And it was one of the most unique experiences, and I had one of the best weekends of my life in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I'd put Michigan as number 10 in terms of states to visit as a tourist. Now for the top 10 for living. This was hard because living is a lot different. You have to factor things in such as economic opportunities, taxes, year-round weather, quality of life things that you don't have to think about as a tourist, but you would have to think about as a resident. And there's really only 5 that kind of stood out to me that I would live in the US personally, or even consider. There's a few honorable mentions. And if I had more of a tolerance for snow, there's several other states I would consider to live. But I really don't like cold weather. I really don't like snow. And so that eliminates a lot of other nice places in the northern part of the country that I just wouldn't be able to live. Like some of the honorable mentions I have in this category are like places like New York, Washington State, New Hampshire, Colorado, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin. The main problem for me for those places is cold. Actually, a lot of the Midwestern metro areas, they have really nice suburbs. Like the Kansas suburbs in Kansas City were actually pretty nice, for example. But it's the climate that really would scare me away from one of those places, more so than politics or lack of things to do or anything like that. I mean, the thing is with the idea of lack of things to do for big cities, like if your city's big enough to host a baseball team, you usually have enough things to do in that metro area to keep you entertained on weekends. The main problem that I have with some of these like second or third tier smaller cities is mainly because their climate is not favorable, and the places with better climate tend to be all much larger cities or more high cost of living cities, unfortunately. But in terms of another honorable mention outside, 2 other honorable mentions outside of the northern cities I've mentioned would be Georgia and Texas, mainly due to the economic opportunities. I think Atlanta, particularly, is a really major city on the rise. And if they have very high, Atlanta stands out to me as a place that has a very high levels of in salaries, but very low cost of living. It is close to California level wages, but with a housing cost, particularly at a fraction of that, which is why I'm very bullish on Atlanta and why I expect more growth there. Texas is a similar story, except I think the prevailing wage scale is a lot lower in Texas. But Texas is so big, and there's like 5 major there's 3 big major metro areas, the Texas Triangle of Dallas, Houston, and Austin, but you've also got San Antonio and El Paso as other significantly sized metro areas in Texas. So you have a diversity of different kinds of places you can live, relatively low cost of living, and a lot of economic opportunity, particularly there. But the heat and the lack of beaches, other than like South Padre Island and Galveston, make it less appealing for me personally, but I could see the appeal of living in Georgia and Texas. So the top 5, I would say states for living would be one I like because California is my favorite, but I'm personally biased because it's my home state and I'm very sensitive to climatic issues. And I know where the good parts to live are in California. Um, Number two, I would say would be for living would probably be Florida. You have nice beach weather, low taxes, um, fairly um, good source of economic growth and relatively lax business regulations. Um, Only probably problem with Florida again is the summer weather, and there might be a culture shock for people from the West Coast there, as well as I think the education system, particularly public schools, isn't so good in Florida. Um, so you'd have to send your kids to private school if you're thinking of that. Number three, I would say is for living would be Hawaii. Like if I was a perma bachelor and never had any kids, I would consider retiring in Hawaii. The main problem with it is just the remoteness. Like your whole life is within 30 miles. So even if you're in the most densely populated island of Oahu, you can get cabin fever pretty quickly. And then also, again, it's schools. Like Hawaii is not really known for having a good education system, whether K through 12 or college. So if you have kids and you want them to get an elite education, you're going to have to move back to the mainland or send them to a boarding school in the mainland. Number four, I would put tied with Arizona and South Carolina. Arizona probably has more economic opportunity, but they both are lacking in terms of Fortune 500 company headquarters, and they both have bad summer weather. Arizona's is a little bit worse, but those are, and the other issue, I'd probably put Arizona slightly ahead of South Carolina because it has a better airport. Like the problem with like Charleston or Myrtle Beach is that their airports don't go nonstop to the West Coast or internationally, like Europe or something like that. And so as a result, limited airports are a problem for somebody who likes to travel or needs to travel for business, and so they get docked for that. Um, Next is really the top 10 states for economic opportunity. So, assuming you don't care about climate or quality of life or family ties or things like that, there are certain states that stand out to me in terms of the best for actual economic opportunity. I would say number one, um, I would say is Florida for economic opportunity. Number two is Georgia. Number three is Texas. Those are the big three I would say in terms of like if you're trying to move someplace to optimize like your career development and taking home the most after tax, after living expense pay, it'd be Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Um, Number four, I would probably put at California. Even with the problems of California's tax and regulatory system, like if you're in tech or an entrepreneur, California still provides a lot of opportunities despite all the problems of the state governance. Number five is similar stories, New York State. New York does have opportunity if you're a young person to make the right connections to build a career in finance or other professions. The problem with New York is it's a short shelf life. You live there for maybe college or your early 20s, and you get out of there by the time you're 30 at the latest with the money you've made and start a life in a more low cost of living place. Um, Number six, I would put Washington State. Washington State. I think Seattle Metro is a disproportionate amount of major Fortune 500 companies, so its size. So if you want a more safe corporate career path and no state income tax, Washington could be very appealing. Like you have Amazon there, Microsoft, Nintendo of America, Starbucks, Costco, Nordstrom. There's probably others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but Seattle has a pretty strong corporate presence first, especially for a city its size. The rain is kind of a downer for me personally, which is why I didn't put in the overall for living in the potential taxes that billionaires tax and other ways that they're trying to cut around the edges to get rid of the state income tax ban might change my opinion of Washington State, but for right now, it's still in the top 10. Next, I would put Idaho. Idaho, if it had more Fortune 500 companies and or a bigger metro area than Boise, it would probably be in the top 5 because its fundamentals otherwise are pretty good. Um, it's the fastest growing state in population. It's a very pro business place. It has very little pro drift up there, at least in the urban areas. It's got a lot of outdoorsy stuff if you like that. Housing is very affordable. The weather is a little bit too extreme for me personally. I don't like winter, so I don't think I could ever live in Idaho. But um, that would, I think that they're a kind of an underrated state, really, from that category. I'd also put Tennessee and North Carolina. I would tie them for eighth. Um, North Carolina, the Research Triangle, and Charlotte are rapidly booming cities and have a lot of economic opportunities that are causing a lot of people from New York to live there. Housing is reasonably affordable. My main issue with North Carolina is that there's not that much to do, like in terms of like recreation, and there's not that many unique things that I can't do in other states. The climate's better than say like New York, but it's still the too extreme, both on the high and the low end for my taste. Like there is snow occasionally in North Carolina, and the summers get pretty bad. Um, but like there, in terms of economic opportunity, it's definitely a place that's on the rise. Um, Same with Tennessee. Um, Tennessee is a similar situation, except it's less likely to become a blue state like North Carolina. Um, and Nashville's a city on the rise. Um, and yeah, it has a lot of traffic, but it's growing. You can buy a house for a reasonable amount there. But yeah, it's climate wise is not really favorable for me personally. And probably it's the similar category of like level of cultural amenities, say that North Carolina has, but they're both on the rise in terms of economic opportunity, which is why I put them both at 8. And then I'd put the number 10, I put Illinois because I think Chicago, for all of the pension system and the government's fault, is a very underrated city. It's the lowest cost of living city, world-class city in the United States. It's probably one of the lowest cost of living adjusted for local incomes of any world-class city globally. And eventually that arb will be filled. And if manufacturing is coming back in a big way, Chicago has the infrastructure to service it better than a lot of other places. So I would put Illinois at number 10. So yeah. Then next we're gonna do now, which is what you guys all wanted me to talk about in the comments, is the bottom 5 states in America that I like the least. Um, there are 4 that were pretty obvious to me. The 5th one, I'm not really sure what to put, but I think New Jersey, West Virginia, Vermont, and Alabama are the bottom 4 states for me. So if you're from one of those places, I'm sorry to say, but um, those are the clear like bottom 4. Um, New Jersey has the high tax and high regulatory environment of like a New York, but it doesn't have all the appeal of living in Manhattan and the cultural amenities that Manhattan has. I guess you could live in Jersey City across the path, but I've done that commute before when I've visited relatives who live in New York and park my car at Liberty State Park, and it's not ideal. So yeah, I would say New Jersey. I know a lot of people are from New Jersey. I don't really know a lot of people who dream of going back. That's probably a reason for that. The next one I would say is West Virginia. West Virginia has some nice mountains, and Harper's Ferry was a cool little national park. But um, I generally, it's very economically distressed. There's not really that much in terms of major cities in West Virginia. Um, yeah, it's got a lot of the Appalachian culture, which is very niche appeal. Um, yeah, I would put West Virginia is down here too. Um, And then the next one, Vermont. Vermont is very rural. It's very cold. It's hyper progressive and in your face, like push it in a way. Like it was like even in 2011 when I went to Vermont, Burlington, it was more woke than Berkeley is today. Um, yeah, it just doesn't appeal to me. There's not really much economic opportunity in Vermont either. I mean, I'm surprised that, and probably my least favorite senators from Vermont, but it's not really, just in general, I didn't really like it from a visitor's perspective. If I was gonna go to New England, I prefer Maine, Massachusetts, or Rhode Island, or New Hampshire, or Connecticut. Actually, I like all the other New England states are actually pretty nice. Um, Next one I would say is Alabama. I got really bad food poisoning when I went to Alabama, so that might have clouded my view of it. But there doesn't really seem to be that much going on other than the Huntsville Space Museum. Um, I It's very rural. It's kind of feels like almost a different country in a lot of ways than other parts of the US. Um, yeah, it's I mean that's why it's down here. It's not really anything that's like, wow, I need to go to Alabama, to be quite honest. Um, and then so that's kind of where those are the bottom four. The fifth one, I guess these are dishonorable mentions, but there's a few. Delaware, I'd maybe put here. I've never been to Rehoboth Beach, which is supposed to be maybe one of the nicer parts of Delaware, but wasn't too impressed with Wilmington. Which, and it's pretty small and there's not much going on in Delaware. Um, so that might be number 5 on this list. I'm trying to think what else would be. I mean, yeah, it probably is Delaware. Now that I think about it, so that's the bottom 5. Um, then the next one I would say is least likely to return. Least likely to return is not the same as dislike, because some of these places are worth visiting once, or they're just too far away that it doesn't make sense to go back. So I would say North Dakota is the state I'm least likely to go to because it's just geographically really far. Like I mean, I could fly to Fargo connecting through maybe, I don't know, Minneapolis, or I have to have a very long drive from somewhere. Um, there's not, it's just really kind of mostly empty Great Plains, Theodore Roosevelt National Park, Fargo, and some fracking sites. So and very tall radio towers. I remember driving through North Dakota, and apparently some of the world's longest, tallest structures are these giant radio towers that are in eastern Montana and western North Dakota. Um, so yeah, that that I mean, but I don't really. Again, there's not really a reason for me to go back to North Dakota. Arkansas is another one. Um, I mean, there probably are some nice things. I've heard that Northwest Arkansas is a micropolitan area on the rise, but it doesn't really have the appeal for me to return. It is also kind of remote and harder to get to compared to other states. Vermont, I've already mentioned the reasons. Plus, it's relatively remote to get to, and I have no interest in going back. Alabama, similar stories. Vermont and West Virginia and Delaware, I already commented on those. Um, Mississippi is another one I'm unlikely to return. I went to Oxford when I went to Mississippi, and I actually liked Oxford. I went and saw Roanoke, which was William Faulkner's old house, and it was a nice little museum. And maybe I'm biased because probably Oxford is the nicest part of Mississippi. I also saw South Haven, which seemed decent, which is a suburb of Memphis. But um, I would say Mississippi, I'm unlikely to return just because of its geographic location. And I mean, I kind of did what I wanted to do there. Um, Next, really would be Oklahoma. I went to Oklahoma City and to Norman. I saw a Sooners football game. It was, I think, when they were playing Tulane when they were like in 2024. I went to that game, and it was a fun experience. It was and like and I had really good Mexican food surprisingly in Oklahoma City for dinner and stayed the night and then drove back to Fort Worth the next day. But I don't really see a reason why I would go back to Oklahoma. I did the thing that when I go to some of these states, one of the things that don't have a lot of conventional tourist attractions, one of the things I like to do is go to a local sporting event, whether it's Major League Baseball or if they don't have a baseball team, like a college football or basketball game. And so I did that. I saw the Sooners in Norman, even though I have no real ties to OU football, but it was fun. But I don't really see a reason that I need to go back unless if maybe I go to if I get back into the NBA, I want to see a Lakers Thunder playoff game. But um, that I just don't really. Otherwise, I don't see why I would go return. Next one would be Minnesota. I've been to Minneapolis twice. I went once pre-pandemic and once post-pandemic, and it was a very different city, and it kind of trended the wrong direction after some of the political drama that happened there in 2020. Um, I mean, I've heard that like Minnesota outside of MSP has some really nice lakes and forest and nature. Um, but I am just not really interested in returning to Minnesota. Um, I mean, unless there's enough of you guys want me to come, then maybe I will come visit Minneapolis, but it's not that big of a market for this channel either. Um, Next one I would probably say is I would least likely to return to would be Kansas. I was just there. I think the suburbs like Overland Park and Shawnee and Lenexa are actually pretty nice in KC. Uh, it's just since I just got there literally this weekend, and it took me 37 years to get to Kansas in the first place. It's probably a low probability that I return anytime soon. Um, and the next one I'm going to do most states. The last one I'm going to do is most states that I would want to return to. And um, I would say the ones that I most want to return to, and these are excluding like the rotation for the tour. Like there's going to be like 9 to 10 cities I regularly go for the tour, which are several in California, Seattle and Washington, Scottsdale and Arizona, Florida, Texas, Atlanta and Georgia, New York and Chicago. So I'm going to exclude those states because I'll probably be going there once a year for if I do future tours or business or other reasons. Like there's usually a reason why I'll go to one of those, and Hawaii as well. Because I like that's my favorite vacation spot in the US. So states that so I exclude Hawaii and the tour stops. What are the 10 most likely states I want to return to? So the smaller ones. Number one, I would say is Maine. Actually, I'm really curious. I only got to see the very southern part of Maine when I went, and I had really good lobster. And it's like seeing it looked like Lake Tahoe, but on an ocean, like with the way that the forest was right along the beach and things like that. But I'd like to go further north, particularly to Acadia National Park. I have not been there. So Maine is on the top of this list. Nebraska is another one. My father is a very big Nebraska Cornhusker fan. And so I would like to go to a game with him at the Red Sea in Lincoln before he's too old to go. So Nebraska is actually a pretty high ranking one for me to return to. And also I'd like to go to one of the Berkshire annual meetings once in my life, which is also in Nebraska. So the only time I've been to Nebraska was to Omaha when I was in graduate school. So it's been a while. Number three, in terms of returning, Oregon. I would like to see the Oregon coast. I've been only to Portland. I don't really like Portland very much, to be quite honest, but I've heard the Oregon coast is really nice, particularly the areas around Astoria and Cannon Beach. I would also like to go check out the Tillamook Cheese and Dairy Factory, which is somewhere I think in between Portland and the Oregon coast. So, I mean, I will likely one day do a meetup in the greater Portland area, most likely Lake Oswego, based on your guys' recommendations. Is that's the place that seems to be the most likely for me to come, and it might be as early as this August, but we'll see. I have a lot going on in my life this summer, so I would like to eventually do a meetup in greater Portland and go see the Oregon coast. Next one would be going back to Michigan. I really enjoyed my time my visit to the Upper Peninsula in Michigan and Mackinac Island, and I'd love to repeat the experience. South Carolina, similar story. I really like Charleston. I really like Hilton Head Island, and yeah, I'd like to do another trip there. Um, especially once with my well, especially since my fiance has never been. I'd like to take her there too. Um, Next one would be Alaska. I'd like to go back to Alaska. I did promise on one of these threads years ago that if we ever broke 1 million subscribers, I would do a live stream in Kodiak Island, Alaska. So if I'm going back to Alaska, it might mean I hit that benchmark. So I definitely want to go back to Alaska. Um, Next, and also it'd be fun to see things like the Northern Lights if I can tolerate the cold or do the husky sled racing type thing. That seems to be something that'd be fun. But yeah, Alaska's on that list. Place like turn. Ohio is another one. I've only been to Cincinnati. I went to a Reds game and then did a meetup, but I'd like to see the rest of the state. I have friends in Columbus I'd like to visit. I've never been to Cleveland, Sandusky, where the Cedar Falls is, or Cedar Fair with the famous theme park. I'd like to check out. So yeah, I've heard also the Pro Football Hall of Fame is fun, but I'm not really an NFL fan, so I might skip that. But yeah, Ohio probably has some things worth for me to see. And then the other one I would say is just the Montana, Wyoming, Idaho corner where Yellowstone is, those 3 states. It feels like another world up there. In the summer, they're really nice. I would like to go back one day. And then an honorable mentions, we have two. One is Banff in Alberta. I mean, Alberta's not a state yet, but if that ever changes, I would like to go back to Banff either way. I was really impressed by by Banff National Park in Alberta. It's like Yellowstone of Canada. And then the last one would be Missouri. Mainly not to go back to Kansas City, but to St. Louis. I've heard St. Louis is kind of an interesting city because it was one of the main cities. Like I think that the fifth biggest city in America at its peak or fourth. They had an Olympics there in 1904, so it has the infrastructure of like a great city, but it's been hollowed out due to declining Mississippi River trade and other economic forces. And I've heard a lot of good things about St. Louis from a tourist perspective. I'd like to see the Gateway Arch, maybe go to a Cardinals game. But that if I was going to go back to Missouri, I'd like to check out St. Louis. Um, so now that I have been to all 50 states, like what is the next goal for me in terms of travel and the tour? Well, the next travel goal is I'd like to go to all the OECD developed nations. I've been to most of them, I think, but I would like to finish that. And there's a few other countries. I don't need to go to all 190 countries, to be honest. A lot of them just aren't safe, like whether due to geopolitical reasons or high crime, or a lot of them don't have enough for me to do to take the risk of like dealing with high crime or disease or geopolitical um, fears. So, like, I don't. It's just not practical to want to go to all 190 countries in the world. I would need to have their economies either shift or their foreign policy shift, and that might all happen in my lifetime. But when it comes to places, I have like top 10 really countries that I do want to visit, plus like a territory. And number one, I would say is Brazil. I would like to see it. I've been to other parts of South America and I just have kind of curiosity for that part of the world. Number two would be New Zealand. Um, I want to try the camper van thing around both the North and the South Island. Um, Number 3, I would say, would be tied with Israel and Egypt. They both have a lot of historical and religious sites, but given the current geopolitical crisis involving Iran in that part of the world, I will likely not be going there for a while. Then number 5 would be the Bahamas, which we are actually going to be planning a what's it called? Private dinner in the Bahamas later, in 2027. The plan is to do it in March. I don't know specific dates yet, but if you live in the Bahamas or you're interested in going to the Bahamas in March 27, we'll probably have a private dinner meeting there. Um, then, um, then also on my list, number 6 would be Tanzania. I want to go to mainland Tanzania to see all the safari animals and go to the island of Zanzibar as well. Then I would say for number 7, I would put Kenya. I'd probably do it as part of the same trip, honestly. It's mainly sort of safari and seeing all the exotic animals in the wild. Number 9, I would put at actually, no, I think I skipped one. I said number 8. Sorry, number 8, I would put at Poland. I've been to most of Europe. Poland's one of the remaining countries I am curious to see, particularly Krakow and the Łyżetka salt mines. Number 9, I would put at Iceland. I'd like to try the midnight golf and the hot springs there. Another place I am very curious about. I've been to most of Europe, but Iceland's one of the remaining spots. And then, um, what's it called? Number 10 in terms of countries I'd like to go to is what's it called? The Seychelles, which are this remote island chain in the Indian Ocean, which is known for being having really unique and exotic nature, and has very nice beaches too. So Seychelles is number 10 in terms of countries I would like to go to that I have not. And my territory that I'd like to go to is French Polynesia, particularly Bora Bora is on my list. That's also my 900,000 subscriber special event will take place in Bora Bora if we ever get to 900,000 subscribers. And then honorable mentions will be Peru, St. Bart's, South Africa, South Korea, Azerbaijan, Ecuador, and Mauritius. So overall, I know this is a little bit long of an intro lecture, but the tour was great. I learned all you guys were great who I met on the tour. I learned a lot of interesting experiences. I don't think the red state, blue state divide is as big as people think it is. I think that use a clear examples of the prosperity theory of politics in real life. And there's a north south divide in terms of how left or right wing your core metro area is, with the northern ones being more progressive and the southern ones, even in California and Arizona, being more conservative. And I was generally impressed. The city that surprised me the most to the upside was Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, we got a much bigger audience than I expected, and um, I think it's a city on the rise due to several economic factors. And it was my first time there, so seeing it kind of was very interesting to me. And overall, that was kind of my take. And now we're gonna go to Q&A. So if you want to ask me questions about anything related to the channel or about the tour, or if you want me to review specific cities, like I'm going to do as I said. I'm going to review cities that I've been on the tour or not. What I've been before, and if I've been there before, I'll give you my honest opinion of your city, whether from a tourist perspective, a living perspective, economic future perspective. If there's a bias on which one you want me to talk about, feel free to do that. Please leave these in the chats, and if you want to make sure I answer it, please do it in the super chats. And I'm going to give you some time to leave those questions. I'm going to make some housekeeping announcements for just general channel news. First, if you want to keep in touch with me and for events or new video releases or written content that I don't put on here, check out my Substack. We just had a new one today about AI that came out. If you want to be in touch to contact me for specific questions when it comes to investments or just any other personal consultations you need, reach out to me for a consultation form or a call through my Calendly. I also, if you like my short form content, I'm not going to flood the YouTube channel with shorts, but I do release my shorts on both my X account, which is linked here, and my Instagram, that is for YouTube specifically. If you want more short form content. And then I also want to announce is the international tour. Like, I'm done with touring until at least August, and probably the only places I'm going to tour the rest of this year are Denver in August, date's not set yet. Santa Cruz, California on August 22nd. San Diego on September 12th. And Houston probably sometime in November. We may also add Austin and Portland, but that is, and maybe Las Vegas, but those are to be determined. But the main tour thing I'm going to plan is a full international tour. And the way I'm going to do this, because it's a lot more difficult to plan an international tour than a US tour, is that I'm already, even though the dates for the Latin America tour will be in February and March next year, and the Europe tour will be May to June next year, I've already published the Eventbrite pages as a demand test. So if you want to make sure I come, please buy your ticket in advance. Consider it a deposit for a future event. The dates are tentative. The locations are not entirely set yet. But if they go above a certain number of sales, and I designed the payment system so that it just will automatically refund if I don't end up setting a hard date for these events, then that to make sure I know how many people actually are going to be there, because just again, the logistics in terms of flights and longer stays and finding spaces in countries you don't speak the language is just a lot more difficult than me doing these in North America. So I need more advanced commitment if you want me to come down over to these overseas events. And I also have and if you're interested in coming to a private dinner in one of the overseas events, just fill out the curate experience form, but mark which city you're interested in me going to. The ones that I do have tentatively planned is some sort of polo day in Argentina in February, one in March, and then a dinner in San Diego in September. I might also do some more, if you guys are interested, doing dinners more regular month, or maybe like once every 2 to 3 months, like a private dinner in Newport Beach, California, locally. If that's something of interest in you, feel free to reach out to me or leave a comment. And then the other thing is we'll go to Montreal and Toronto. I'm not Toronto, Montreal and Quebec City if we break 150,000 subscribers. And we'll go to Dorado, Puerto Rico if we break 250,000 subscribers. So I just sent the link for the international tour pre-sale. But that's kind of all about that. Now that I have all the housekeeping out of the way, let's go to questions. Billings, Montana outlook. I went to Billings once. I drove through it and stayed the night there on the way to Mount Rushmore from Bozeman. And I think with Montana, I think the real opportunity is going to be more in the western part of Montana. Bozeman or Missoula probably have more upside than Billings. I think Billings seemed when I went there in 2020 like a little bit of a hollowed out industrial town. I don't really know what the catalyst would be to bring back Billings, but I do think Montana is going to get a lot of growth, but it will be more on the west, what's it called? The western side of the state. Have I ever been to Hanoi? No, I have not. I've only gone to the southern part of Vietnam. Let's see. Do you think gas will keep going higher? I mean, unless if there's general inflation, I think it's going to kind of stay at these levels and not go too much higher, but in the short term, anything can happen. I think at least in California, if gas gets above like $7 a gallon, that's when you start to see real demand destruction. And that will, I think, put a check on oil prices ultimately. Like I was driving today and I saw in my local gas station there it's over $6.50 a gallon, which is kind of crazy. Like we did kind of have that briefly in 2022, and I think it caused a mini reset. It wasn't caused, but it was part of a driver of a mini recession that happened then, because you saw oil prices spike then due to the Ukraine conflict, and at a certain point, people started change their driving habits, and it's about that $7 a gallon level. Is what's it is that level? Metro areas with the highest class mobility. It's basically it'd be places that have low cost of living and good career and educational opportunities. Um, and it also depends. Do you mean class mobility for people who move there from other places, or or class mobility for people who are from there? If it's the former, then it's places like the South, like Texas, um, like Dallas, particularly Austin, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Atlanta are probably the highest mobility for transplants. For local people, it would be more Midwestern cities, I would say, have the most social mobility, because a lot of them still have some job opportunities, but a much lower cost of living profile. Um, I think so that so that's really the answer to that question. Still bullish on nuclear energy. Yes, I am. Um, my view hasn't really changed on that one. Um, let's see. Um, let's say others. Brooklyn, New York. I'm not really a fan of Brooklyn at all. I went to Brooklyn actually when I was in New York. I took the train to Canal Street, where I think where the bridge is. I walked the bridge, went through downtown Brooklyn and Dumbo and the area between there and Williamsburg, and then Williamsburg. And it was the first time I'd been to Brooklyn in probably almost 10 years. I think since 2016. And it was in worse shape now than I think it was back then in a lot of ways. And I just think I'm not really impressed. It's almost Manhattan prices, but a fraction of the quality of Manhattan. Um, so and apparently those are the trendy and most expensive parts, and I still wasn't impressed by Brooklyn. So what does that say about Brooklyn? Um, why am I so optimistic about the U.S. economy? Well, the U.S. economy is the place that is the treats capital and entrepreneurs the best in the world. And if you want to grow, you need to be the place that attracts entrepreneurship and attracts growth. And the US is good at doing both of those. So I think the US economy is going to continue to be prosperous. We're also a leader in technology, particularly AI. We export the things that most countries need the most, which is food, energy, technology, entertainment, and weapons. So I don't really see the US what's it called? I don't see that changing anytime soon. The only thing that can really screw up the US is if they elect economic populists that blow up our system to try to, in a vain attempt, make it more like Europe. So, we can't outcompete Europe in terms of creating an easy life for little effort, because we don't have a bigger country to subsidize our defense. So that won't work. And I think the US also has a relatively healthier demographic profile and has still the best universities in the world. I mean, see my video I did in Seattle about why the US is the best place to start a business. I go into a lot of details on that. Sacramento, California. I think Sacramento has a better future than the other Central Valley cities. But the Sacramento is a government town. So if you think the state government is going to continue to grow bigger and a larger percentage of the economy, Sacramento is going to do great. If the political winds ever change in California and people realize that Sacramento is the problem and not the solution, then Sacramento is going to struggle mightily. Just think of it as a mini DC in a way. Like that's my view on Sacramento. I think, um, yeah, that's my take. Next thing is Santa Barbara. I really like Santa Barbara. I went to college in Santa Barbara, so I'm very biased. It's a great place to live if you are under 23 or over 65. But if you're like a career age, working age person, there's not much to do. I think Deckers is like a major corporation. The people who make Uggs, I think, are based there, but it's not like if you're trying to build a career, Santa Barbara is not the place to be. It's also extremely high cost of living. It might be more expensive than San Francisco now because of they have a lot of anti-growth policies that basically fix the amount of residential units that are allowed, even though there's plenty of land. Like Santa Barbara could easily be a million city population metro area, but due to a lot of rampant NIMBYism that started much earlier than other parts of America, it never developed that way. And that's why it's so expensive, and that's why it has the same population as it did in 1950, whereas basically every other city has grown exponentially. Cities you have traveled to with the largest wealth divides. Oh yeah, back to Santa Barbara though. I think Santa Barbara, if they did allow more growth, would be one of the most prosperous high growth cities in the world because people would love to live there. It's just that there's nothing for them to do, and there's no place for them to live, literally. But I love Santa Barbara. I like Montecito. I'll probably do a dinner once a year at Lucky's in Montecito and do trips to Santa Barbara. Great place. I just wouldn't want to live there because it's just not dynamic enough. So cities I've been to with the largest wealth divides. US or globally. Like globally, it's Delhi, India. That had the single largest wealth divide of any city I've ever been to in the world. It really shook me to my core seeing that level of extreme poverty that I did when I went there in my late teens. So, in terms of the US, I would say the most extreme levels of wealth divides I saw are in a few cities, Tampa and Miami. I would say have some of the biggest wealth divides in America. Like basically, if you are near the intercoastal, it's very wealthy and nice. And if you are not near the intercoastal and not far enough to be like the inland exurbs, it's very high poverty and it looks like you're in a completely different country. I would say LA has a lot of extremes too. Like there are very nice places in LA, and then there are places that look like they are no-go zones. I would similar to the Bay Area, like the divide between San Francisco and like northern part of San Francisco and the southern part of San Francisco, and like the La Mirinda and Marin County suburbs versus Oakland are some of the most extreme divides I've seen in America, as well. So, yeah, I would say if I had to say for US cities, it's number 1 is Greater Miami area. Number 2 would be the Bay Area. And then I'd say tied for 3 would be Tampa and Los Angeles in terms of most extreme. And then Chicago has a north and south side, and Philly. But the thing is, the wealthier areas aren't as extremely wealthy as, so the gap is lower because the higher end is not as steep in Philly. But that's my take on that. How do we change the culture into something less destructive? I think you need to have educational reform and more of an embrace of religion, and also probably more like, I don't know, more intact and bigger family structures. Those are probably the things that would do it. That's how we get there. It's really hard. So what are your thoughts on Pittsburgh? I've never been to Pittsburgh, so I don't really have any good thoughts on it. Montreal. I like Montreal. It's a very underrated city. It's like a piece of Europe in North America. Some of the locals are not as friendly to me because I didn't speak French. I did remember that. That was a big thing I noticed. They had really good maple syrup ice flavored ice cream, which I had never seen really anywhere else in the world. They have a good house music scene. Like their radio stations all played really good EDM music. I remember on my drive there. Um, and so there's a lot to like about Montreal as a visitor. It's very walkable too. I would like to go back. When I went when I was a grad student and had very little disposable income, so I couldn't really enjoy it the way I could maybe now later in life. And so I would like to go back to Montreal, and I would like to go back to Quebec. I've never been to Quebec City, so I'd like to go to Quebec City and see the Chateau de Frontenac. So I'd probably do them together. So yeah, Rockford, Illinois. I have never been to Rockford, Illinois. So the only place I've been to in Illinois is Chicago and some of the Chicagoland suburbs. So I have nothing really to say about that. Um, let's see, Seattle. Well, it depends. Like Seattle, if they keep trying to pass laws to get rid of their tax advantages compared to Oregon, why would anybody base themselves there versus Oregon, which has a lower cost of living and no sales tax? But Seattle and can be very nice. Some of the most high trust suburbs in America are the eastern suburbs of Seattle. You can have a very high quality of life there. I personally don't like the rain. I personally don't like the mainstream culture of Seattle. I love my audience in Seattle. Some of the coolest people I've met on this tour are live out there, and they like coming to my meetups because they can meet interesting, like-minded people that they wouldn't maybe see on a day-to-day basis living in a city like Seattle. So I've yeah, and it's very nice in the summer for tourists. I don't think I would fit in very well culturally, and if I was a single person trying to date, I don't think Seattle would be a very good place to live, especially if you're a single man for a variety of reasons. Um, it's a great place if you are like in a relationship or married to go for a romantic date weekend, particularly those the hot tub boats in Lake Union are really cool. So yeah, that's my take on Seattle. Milwaukee. Okay. I went to Milwaukee in 2022. I tried the burgers at Cops, which are actually pretty good. Um, I mean, I went to downtown and walked around. The weather is just too cold there for me to really ever consider living there. Um, it seems like Madison is the more like up and coming city in Wisconsin. It like if Milwaukee really wanted to capitalize in Kenosha and Racine, some of these further south suburbs, they can just try to they should upscale and be like the place that wealthy Chicagoland people move to avoid taxes, and they just need to up some of their upscale cultural amenities, and they could probably play the tax arb game against Chicago. So there's potential in that angle for the southern suburbs of Milwaukee. But I mean, I think it's just okay, honestly. I mean, I really liked visiting Wisconsin as a whole. Sheboygan was a nice little town on the lake. Green Bay was fun to go see a Packers preseason game. Madison was unique. If I went back to Wisconsin, I would like to see New Glarus, which is the little Swiss town in Lake Geneva. But so if I do a Wisconsin meetup, maybe I should do New Glarus, but I don't know if any Wisconsinites would come to a New Glarus meetup. But Indianapolis, let's see, Indianapolis economically, I mean, it seems to be done a little bit better than some of the other Rust Belt cities, but I don't really know about what kind of big corporate presence there is in Indianapolis. It's got a relatively low cost of living, which is a plus. I don't think it's as cold as Chicago, which is a perk. And they have the Indy 500, which is a really cool experience. I would recommend going to the Indy 500 at least once in your life. It's nothing. I don't even care about car racing, and it was worth going. Like, it's not about the race, it's more the experience, to say the least. And that's really the thing. I think the appeal of Indianapolis is to go to the Indy 500. Carmel is a really nice suburb in north of Indianapolis. It's like the most roundabouts, I think, of any city in America. That's what it's known for, and that's where I stayed when I went to the Indy 500. So you've got that going for it too. But yeah, I don't really know much about Indianapolis' economy on that side of things. Cities with with the friendliness and the unfriendliness people. Well, I would say the least friendly people are French speakers, generally speaking. Not all of them, but like when I went to southern France and to Montreal, people were fairly unfriendly to me. So I think it's because I'm an English speaking American, but or else and then some of my relatives' friends who live there would in France would make fun of me for being Christian or being from America or having right of center politics or whatever. And I didn't really take too kindly to that. So maybe that's my I'd say least friendly would be those countries. Most friendly, Chicago is extremely friendly people there. A lot of very I'd also say Kansas City is a pretty friendly crowd as well. Minneapolis, at least Minneapolis pre-pandemic when you actually saw like young people out and about, not the ghost town like it was when I went there the second time. Um, yeah. Also, people are friendly in Wyoming and Montana. We're also pretty friendly too. America is generally a much more friendly country than people give it credit for. Like Australians also, I would say, in the friendly category. Australia is a very friendly place. Um, yeah, the unfriendly, yeah, I would say. I'd also say South Florida, or like Miami, particularly, not a friendly place. And for America, I'd say the least friendly place is Miami. Even though I think even though it's a nice city for tourism, and I like West Palm particularly, but and I think the people were friendlier in Palm Beach County than they are further south. But yeah, I that's kind of where I would say. And then New Yorkers, they're like New York is not that friendly, but it's refreshing that they are very direct. So I can't, and I would say Philadelphia is not really known for being that friendly of a place either, like from my experience. But Northeast, Miami, probably least friendly in America. Rocky Mountain states and Midwest are most friendly in America. Um, California, somewhere in between. I think Boston was not particularly unfriendly or friendly. It was somewhere in between. I like the people, and none of this applies to people who come to my meetups. They're all great, but I'm talking more just about the general, like dealing with strangers and the general population. Um, so yeah, would moving to New Zealand be a good move for an upcoming American man? No, it probably would not be, because the problem with New Zealand is that it's too small. It has less it's about the same people as Orange County, California. Yeah, it's the size of, like, the state of California, I think, land-wise, or pretty close, maybe even bigger. But the point being is that, um, it's also very remote. A lot of young New Zealanders have to move to Australia for economic opportunities and job opportunities. So if you're independently wealthy, um then yeah, it's a good place to bug out. And I'd recommend, and I've never been, and I would like to go for vacation. But if you're a young person who's not from there, um, yeah, it's probably not a good place to just build a life from scratch, unless if you are moving with like a local that you married or something like that. Um, let's see. What is some of the nuanced cultural differences you noted while working in Singapore? They have Singapore, at least back when I was there, a lot of people would work who are in like salary 9 to 5 type jobs would work on Saturdays, which you didn't really see in America that much. Um, One thing too is that you tend to have somewhat preferential treatment as an expat, at least when I lived there, but it's kind of also on a superficial level. It's not as easy to make deep friendships there than I would say in America, but that might just be me because I was a foreigner. Um, but yeah, I mean that's but I don't know. It's a very multicultural cosmopolitan place. So I didn't really feel that much culture shock in Singapore. The other thing is the food courts are so the nicest Asian food in the world. Some of it is in Singaporean food courts. Like the food courts in Asia had better Asian food than sit down Asian restaurants in California, which was, I guess, that's kind of a culture shock, I would say. But that might just be more of a local cuisine variant. St. Louis, I already talked about that earlier. It's a place I'd like to see, but I've never been. Um, Cali, Colombia, never been. No comment. Tulsa, same thing. Never been. Um, no comment. And living in Boise, any general population dealing with sustained and rapid population growth. Well, I mean, there's certain investment implications I don't really want to get into that there's as a result, there's a lot of opportunities there, which makes it appealing. Um, but I would say that, um, yeah, I mean, if they make sure that when you do have like vote in elections, you make sure to vote for expanding infrastructure, and that even if it requires a bit more public spending than you would like, build the roads for a size of a city that is twice the size it is now, because you'll eventually fill it up. Like I've seen the difference for this. Like where I live in Orange County, the local government and the Irvine Company planned to have a city much bigger than it actually was when they built all the roads 30, 40 years ago. And so as the population grew, it never felt like we never had the same problems of all the side streets being jammed up with traffic because the infrastructure grew before the population did, or at least caught up with it. So that is the thing you need to be aware of. Whereas places like Atlanta, on the other hand, I remember because I got stuck in really bad traffic just to go a few miles from my hotel to the, the venue space I rented in Buckhead. They have major arteries that connect parts of the city that are only one lane on each side. And Austin has a similar problem as this too. It's like the infrastructure is underdeveloped for how big the city is and how fast it is growing. And so that really that's that's the thing. You need to be mindful to make sure like the infrastructure develops, whether it's electric utilities, whether it's roads, water treatment, all that stuff needs to grow faster than the population. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of disruptions and lower quality of life issues. Um, yeah. Let's see. What's it called? Is Singapore the Dubai of Asia? Have you been to Dubai? No, I've never been to Dubai, and it looks like I won't be going for a while. Um, but given what's going on in the world, it was a place I wanted to go to when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, it's gradually losing appeal to me for a variety of reasons. Singapore kind of is. It's the regional financial hub of Asia, especially after Hong Kong got hollowed out after the CCP crackdown on it in 2019. So I would say Singapore is something like if I had to compare it to an American city, it's like if you mixed Chicago and Tampa into a single city, like or something like that of Asia. Like it's like the second like Shanghai and Tokyo and um, Singapore are the main financial centers, but they're about relatively equal in power. Singapore has benefits because it's more open to Western capital than the other two, and English is the dominant language. So, yeah, I don't think it's like Dubai in the sense where people just go there to escape for taxes, and it's not really known for being a party or influencer hub either, like Dubai was. But um, Singapore is more of like an actual city where people go to do business and make things happen, and it's got housing prices that are expensive as like California, but the taxes are lower. Um, let's see. Do you think the Midwest will have an economically strong 20-year run? Um, yes, I do, but it might not. You might not start to notice it for another 5 to 10 years or so. They have the infrastructure for if manufacturing comes back, that would make sense to put it there first for a variety of reasons. And the lower cost of living is going to attract younger people to go to these places. Um, what do you think of Salt Lake? Similar to Denver? No, it's very different to Denver because it's a different crowd of people who live there, mainly due to the influence of the LDS church and culture. Salt Lake is rapidly growing. I think it's Denver probably has more upside in terms of real estate because they're more likely to pass environmentalist restrictions on development compared to Utah. But in terms of actual economic growth, I think Utah has the advantage because it's more business friendly. Um, let's see. Why is a populist candidate bad for the US? Because economic populism is generally bad for any economy, and the US's main advantage is to serve the interests of the business class. What I mean of that are the independent professional classes and the business owner classes. Like that's where economic growth comes from. It doesn't really come like but a lot of that's kind of why it would be bad. And a populist candidate is going to probably do things like increase regulations from business. They are going to raise taxes to confiscatory levels. They like they'll or they will um, have certain union or job or requirement minimum job requirements, or there's a lot of things they can do more or more protectionism on trade. All of these are examples of economic populism that tend to be on the net bad for economies. Um, but yeah, like I think if you had like somebody like Zoran Mondami, not like with his economic policy run the country, yeah, it would be pretty bad, I would say. Um, so let's see. Any thoughts on upstate New York? Well, I'm going to probably do a video about this because I saw this news story about Buffalo, particularly, and how they're going to spend $850 million to keep the Bills in Buffalo. And I'm like, what the Bills essentially are doing is buying relevance. And could you make your city relevant for a fraction of that cost? That's really a question to think about, like versus just paying it to a sports owner to keep the stadium there. Was it be better to invest that in something else? And the problem with upstate New York is that it has some of the worst snowstorms and snow cover of any place in America because of the lake effect. And a lot of its old industries like steel have moved out. So yeah, that I don't really know. Like they're trying to do a lot of incentives to bring startups there, but if I'm a startup and I have to deal with New York level state income tax and New York level business regulations and the bad weather of upstate New York, it's a very tough sell. They kind of have a big dilemma. I already talked about Atlanta. I'm very bullish on Atlanta. I think it's a great place for economic opportunity. I wouldn't live there personally because of climate reasons, but I and also I maybe cultural things too because I'm more of a California guy, but it's a city on the rise, like for sure. I'm very bullish Atlanta. Um, do you think making new cities is a correct move for American infrastructure. Yeah. I mean, the problem is that you can't just build a new city like the Field of Dreams and expect people to come. You need to make sure that there are employers who move to that city, or like a prestigious university that is set up in that city, or something to be an anchor to drive other people. Yeah. Good night. Thanks, Nick. Yeah. Thank you for the support. And yeah, look forward to chatting with you on the next live. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that with new cities, I think, or the thing is, there are a lot of small to mid-sized cities that have great locations that, if you just got rid of the NIMBY and environmental restrictions, could be the next great American cities. Like examples would be Boulder, Colorado, Santa Barbara, California, San Luis Obispo, California, um, like maybe somewhere on the Oregon coast, or St. Augustine, Florida. There's a lot of places, Santa Fe, New Mexico, that probably have a lot of potential, but that are artificially constrained for political or environmental reasons. And growing those, maybe some Bozeman, Montana might be in that category too. But that could be a good compromise. But in general, I think, yeah, spreading out the population and making more cities that are, say, like, I don't know, the size of like a San Diego or a Kansas City, like that level, that has enough amenities that people want to live there, but is a lower cost of living and not as crowded in terms of traffic or other issues of ultra big cities. Given the very conservative politics, why do you think West Virginia remains poor? Is it just lack of concentrated urban center, or do you think there are policy issues present? I think the lack of an urban center. I think the lack of relatively undereducated population. There might be some things also. Its economy is built on coal, and coal is not really relevant anymore in the global economy on a mass scale, and they need to find something new to do or build there. Like, what is the industry that West Virginia is going to build around? Like, you need what? And it's not even for a red state. It's relatively recently red state, so it's not built with the same pro-business economic model that a place like Texas or Georgia or Florida has. So, like, if I'm a company, would I rather move my business to Dallas, Atlanta, or West Virginia? I mean, the answer is pretty clear. And they do have universities there, but WVU or Marshall are not U.S. News top 50 universities. They just aren't. So you've got that. Like, what's the draw? I mean, the only national acclaimed thing I know of West Virginia is the Greenbrier Resort. But yeah. What do you believe to be the Chicago of the South? That's probably Atlanta, honestly. I think Dallas is the LA of the South. I think that Austin is the San Francisco of the South. Houston is the Seattle and San Diego combined of the South. And Miami is the New York of the South. And like Tampa is probably like the Pittsburgh of the South. So yeah, I mean, that if I had, and this is rough, I'm just throwing out random cities, but I think Atlanta, probably the closest to the Chicago of the South, would probably be Atlanta, is my guess. And I think Georgia is going to turn into a state like Illinois in terms of its politics. So I think that in terms of both how the political structure is, where you're going to have one big blue metro area versus the rural downstate, just like Illinois. And given the history of political machines, I think Atlanta is a state that's ripe to have a Chicago-style political machine potentially too. So, yeah. Do you see the Texas Triangle running away with economic development due to low energy costs and petrochemical industry? Yeah, I do. I don't really see a reason why it won't keep growing, to be quite honest. So, yeah, that's kind of I'm still bullish on the Texas Triangle. Would you go into debt to become a doctor or a dentist? I have about 100K and make 80K now in accounting. I'm not happy with my career. I have an interest in healthcare. Well, first of all, like you're not just this is not just a financial cost; it's a time cost. Like becoming a doctor is going to cost you at least 6 years of your life, and you can't really just do it for the money. You have to be really passionate about medicine because it's not worth it just for a stable job. Dentist will take me a little less time and a little less depth than a doctor, but it's similar um, trajectory. Um, yeah, I think you would think down what you really want to do, and then kind of once you have a better path, then come about it. And if you want more details, you got to schedule like a consulting call with me because that's kind of might be a little bit too personal to ask about on the chat. Um, Best younger generation old money Caribbean vacation. What do you mean by younger generation old money? So like if you're from old money, but you're like in your 20s or 30s, I just want to clarify it so I can answer your question correctly. Um, but yeah, here's the form for the okay. Yes. Well, all right. I have a few ideas. Um, I would if you have a family, I think the Bahamas are pretty good. Barbados, I think, is underrated on this category. They've built in a lot of new upscale resorts there recently, and it's a bit farther away than the conventional. It's more isolated than the conventional Caribbean destinations like Jamaica or the Bahamas or the Dominican Republic, which that's a pearl drift based in DR, but like and it tends to be hit by hurricanes less. So I would take a look at Barbados. St. Bart's is like the classic old money Caribbean place, but I think it might skew a little bit older of a crowd and it's a little bit sleepy. I've never been, but that's what I've experienced. And then Grand Cayman is fun too, but a lot of people say that can be sleepy too because it's pretty small. It's only got 60,000 people, but if you want like 7 Mile Beach is one of the nicest beaches I've ever been to in the world, and I think definitely in the Caribbean. So it's probably somewhere either like the more exclusive parts of the Bahamas, um, the the Grand Cayman or Barbados. And I did a whole video called the Old Money Vacation Guide, which I go into all the details about all the Caribbean islands. So if you haven't watched that, I would recommend it because I do a lot more detail in there than I would just. Um, Bermuda's technically not the Caribbean though. It's way further north. It's off the coast of North Carolina. I mean, people bucket it with the Caribbean, but it's geographically not in the Caribbean. And I've heard good things about Bermuda. It's got really good golf and nice beaches, but it's also a lot more hit or miss because it is more geographically north. It's not constantly warm. It could get chilly there in the winter. So um, keep that in mind. So that's so if you're looking for more of like a pure warmer weather getaway in the winter, I'd go a little bit more south than Bermuda. But Bermuda is on my bucket list. I should have put that in my honorable mentions category. I'd love to go to Bermuda. And if there's enough of you guys who'd want to do a Bermuda meetup or private dinner, reach out to me. Like the one I do have for private dinners and curated experiences in Caribbean and Latin America so far are Argentina, Uruguay, Sao Paulo, and Bahamas. But if we had the numbers to do something in the Cayman or Bermuda or St. Bart's, that would be fun. Guyana. Okay. Guyana is a small country. I think it's less than 600,000 people. And the northern coast of South America is kind of a backwater, nothing much going on. But they recently had a lot of discoveries of offshore oil. So that, especially now with what's it called? With the with oil prices as high as they are, um, I don't know what time it's going to take for their drill. I know Exxon's made a deal with Guyana to drill there, but I don't know how long it's going to take for that supply to get online. If it already is online, then Guyana is going to be printing money with all the oil they're going to be selling. But if oil falls by the time they get online, they'll still make good money. And I think Guyana will be like, it might even join OPEC. It's going to be one of those type of countries is kind of my outlook for it. So that's my take on Guyana. They'll benefit financially from oil, but we'll see at what price. Do you think going to Disneyland is pro behavior? If you have children, it's not. Or if you're under 18, it's not. Like, and it could even not be if you're doing like a date day or something. But if you're like a group of single friends in your 30s or 40s going to what's it called? Going to Disneyland, then I could kind of see it being a little bit pro. But it's also the more theme parks can be fun though. So I like going to theme parks. I usually don't go to Disney theme parks because of what's it called? They're just way more expensive and the lines are a lot longer than other local equivalents here in California. So that's why I haven't been to Disney since I was about 14 years old. But yeah, I'd probably go back to Disneyland when I have kids. So I don't think it's inherently pro. It's just not. I just don't think it makes sense, even for those who do like theme parks. Okay, so now I'm going to scroll up because I think I missed some. If you want me to do a review of your city or have general questions, please leave them in the comments. Super chats will get priority because a lot of things get lost. And yeah, we can. And so but I'll scroll up and take a look to see if I could find some of the ones older in the archive. I've never heard of Albany, Bahamas, but I'm open to it. Reach out to me directly if you'd like to help with that. Yeah, I'm planning to do a meetup in Bahamas in March. It's just a matter of the where and the specific day are to be determined. But yeah, Bay Area. Okay. I'm actually pretty bearish on the Bay Area long term. I did a whole video called San Francisco is the next Detroit. I think there's a little bit of an echo boom due to AI, and there'll be a few star players who make a lot of money on that. But the level of employment at AI startups compared to previous rounds of startups is just not the same. And so I think the economy is going to continue to hollow out in the long run in the Bay Area. I think the Bay Area just does I lived in San Francisco for 3.5 years. So I have some experience with actually more than almost 4 years. So I have some experience with it. I think that the opportunity set there isn't as good as say it was in the 2010s for a younger person. But if you are working in tech, it's still a good place to network and do your early career. I view cities like San Francisco as paid grad school. You go there to save some money, but also to learn and make connections and gain some insights you wouldn't otherwise. And you use the contacts and the experience and the access to capital and other things to pursue your own ventures or get a job you're back in your hometown or where you actually want to live long run. So I would say, yeah. And then for visitors, it's actually really nice, especially if you're not assuming you're either in a serious relationship, engaged or married. I don't really think it's a great place to take kids, but for couples, it's a great weekend place. They have best restaurant scene, I think, in America is in San Francisco. I think even better than New York. Good golf courses, very walkable. It's the most scenic city in terms of natural and architectural beauty, I would say. It's just that the crazy politics and as a result, the tolerance for public disorder and the tolerance for pearl drift is what I don't like about it. And it's just also it's very expensive. So you tend to overpay for lower quality things outside of restaurants and golf courses. But yeah, that's my take. I think the Bay Area is actually worth visiting. I personally live there. I have friends who are from there and live there and love it, but it's just not my cup of tea. Thoughts on Vegas? Vegas tried to rebrand as an upscale vacation destination when it really is not. It's a pearl drift travel destination. And if you're curious about where all the pearl drift travel destinations are, I did a whole video about pearl drift tourism last year, which breaks all of this down. And so you can use it. I personally don't gamble. I don't drink alcohol. I don't like club culture or really anything associated with it. So Vegas doesn't really particularly appeal to me personally. I've been a few times for business. Had my first meetup of the tour back in December 2024 was in Las Vegas. But yeah, it just doesn't appeal. The weather's too hot as well for most of the year. It just doesn't, and the price level is too high for what you're getting. Like if I'm gonna spend like what a Vegas trip costs these days, I'd rather go to Florida. I'd rather go to San Diego. I would rather go to Hawaii. Um, it's just, and I think it's gonna continue to grow because it's an affordable place for people to live. So, but the problem is that it has less education and has less high paying white collar jobs. I think there are some more businesses moving there, but it's slow to say the least. I mean, I think if in terms of Nevada, I might actually be more bullish on Reno and the Reno Tahoe area than I am for Vegas for a variety of reasons. Um, Thoughts on Austria? I like Vienna. Vienna is a wonderful city for a tourist. It's got a lot of history. It's kind of like a discount version of Switzerland. Like it's not quite as nice as Switzerland, but it's a fraction of the price. Vienna has a lot of cool culture. It has Prater Park, which is like a theme park, like right in the middle of the city. It's like an amusement park inside a central park. It's very unique. Good food, good transportation system. Um, I would go back to Vienna. I mean, I would do a meetup in Vienna as part of the European tour. If you'd like me to go to Vienna, please vote in my voting form, which I forgot to put in the chat until 2 hours in. So, but if you want to vote on where I go, here it is. And if you want to pre-register, pre-buy tickets for the pre-sale for the international tour, um, go check out the Eventbrite pages for those specific cities we have, and please vote on other cities you want. Vienna is one we are considering adding to the tour if there is enough demand. Um, I've never been to Austria outside of Vienna. I've heard Salzburg is nice. I've heard Innsbruck is nice. I have some relatives who grew up in Innsbruck, but I I don't really know enough about Austria outside of Vienna to really comment. Um, let's see. Um, what thoughts on New Orleans? New Orleans is really sad, honestly. Like it was one of the great cities in America. It was the New York of the South or the Philadelphia. It's probably the Philadelphia of the South today. It's probably a good comparison. Philadelphia was the most important city in the original colonial America, and it got surpassed by New York for a number of reasons. And like New Orleans and Philadelphia is a city that has a lot of potential and could do a lot better, but the combination of political and social factors have held Philadelphia and greater Philadelphia back the last century. And it's a similar story to New Orleans in the South. New Orleans has an elite university in Tulane. Um, it has the old historic French Quarter. It has a rich history. It has very good, unique cuisine. Um, it has like the event appeal with the Superdome and just the conference infrastructure, but it is plagued by very high crime rates. It's I think them and Memphis are like two of the most dangerous cities in America, and so that is a real problem that holds back New Orleans is the crime. Other thing is just the decay. due to Louisiana probably being the most corrupt red state politically, and New Orleans being a particularly corrupt city doesn't really help matters. So they underfund like key infrastructure, and that's partially what was responsible for the levees breaking in Hurricane Katrina, and the city's still to recover by then. Like I went there a few years ago, and it looked like a city that was quote unquote enjoying the decline. Like you could tell its best days were behind it, and the city kind of knows that, but they won't say it because it's kind of a mean thing to say. But that's really kind of my take on New Orleans. I think it's worth visiting at least once. I'm not much of a partier. I know that's a lot of the appeal of it, but it's worth going just to try the food. Like I had beignets for the first time in New Orleans, and I had alligator meat and a lot of good Cajun shrimp and things like that, and catfish and all the other unique stuff. It's worth it to go try the food. It's also worth it to go and explore some of the historical parts, like the French Quarter, and taking one of those airboats to see all the alligators and the bayou. I would go for a weekend. Would I live there? No. Is it known to be known for great economic opportunity? Not really. The other problem is that the Mississippi River trade became a lot less employment heavy. Like there's still economic activity going through the Mississippi River, but it's more efficient and needs less people. So like that all the Mississippi River cities have been hit hard. Like the Mississippi River Delta, Mississippi's poverty issues, Memphis, St. Louis, and New Orleans. The whole Mississippi River economy has struggled. Arizona. I did a whole video about Arizona called The Economic Future of Arizona, where I go into it. I think it's going to be a very volatile and cyclical place, but it will grow in the long run. So I don't really want to repeat the whole video I did about Arizona, but I will share it with you here because biggest pro-drift state in the U.S. That's a tough one because it's not really like a state. It's usually certain parts of states that are pro-drift, but yeah, it's probably New Jersey or West Virginia if I had to guess at it. There are certain parts of Florida I would also, but there's really no one single state that pro-drift is concentrated in. It's kind of widespread, but it's most common in warmer weather states in the South and the West. The Midwest is the least pro region of the country. I'd also say the Mountain West is also relatively less pro, but yeah, it's the warmer weather places on the South and the West Coast generally have the most of it. But are the cities in Australia basically unlivable with the cost of real estate? I mean, it depends on what stage of life you are in. It seems like that they find some way to make it work down there with that. Like if you are a mid-level income person, I think life is actually more livable in Australia than in other Western countries, even the United States. It hurts it's not for lower income people. Europe is better. And for higher income people, like higher income, I mean 150K plus, America is better. But I think Australia is probably the best. I did a whole video about this. Let's see. Calgary. Calgary is probably the city that's the most upside in Canada. Like on a relative basis compared to other Canadian cities, I'm very bullish on Calgary. It kind of reminds me of a hybrid of Dallas and Denver. It's kind of got the sprawl and a little architecturally looks similar to Dallas. A lot of oil influence, kind of like Dallas, but location wise, it's a lot like Denver, where it's right next to like the Rocky Mountains and a major national park. In Denver, the case Rocky Mountain National Park, and in Calgary's case, it's Banff. I personally like Banff better than Rocky Mountain National Park, but yeah, and also if you're an American tourist, Calgary and Banff is a great deal. especially with how weak the Canadian dollar is. I would highly recommend visiting Banff. Okay. Do you think the Western US can grow to a similar population as the Eastern US? Or do you think there are market forces preventing large metros outside of California? Well, I think the lack of water is the main reason why the West hasn't been growing. And because of lack of water, there's not enough arable land to feed everybody in the West. Um, and so that might be the thing that held back city development originally. And it's probably limits its potential now. And I think a lot of the Western states have bad economic and housing policies, particularly, which is why their real estate markets are way overvalued compared to the East. I actually think migration patterns are going to be moving back to the East, to the South and the Midwest at the expense of the West. So I don't see that happening anytime, especially with demographic decline. Let's see. I'm just scrolling to see. I lost some of the old live chats, so I don't. Somebody asked me about Philadelphia. Okay, so Philadelphia has a lot of. It's similar to St. Louis and New Orleans in the sense it has a lot of potential, but it's bad governance that and just general economic cycle shifting away from it. It's a Rust Belt city that happens to be on the East Coast, is Philadelphia. And Philadelphia has all the institutions and infrastructure to be a great city. That's an Ivy League university in UPenn. It has several other good universities, including Villanova. Um, it has one of the best art museums in the United States in the form of the Philadelphia Art Museum. It has a lot of history, like Independence Hall and the Constitution Center and the Liberty Bell. Like, it has a good waterway, a good port. It's got a good location. It's less than 2 hours away from New York and less than 3 hours away from Washington, D.C. Like, and it has like good industrial infrastructure, but the problem is that the local politics has caused North Philly and West Philly to decay badly, and it has made a large parts of it unlivable. The mainline suburbs are pretty nice. I lived in the mainline when I lived in Greater Philadelphia. Um, and Philadelphia was kind of a culture shock for me. It's very different than California in a lot of ways. I think the weather's a little bit too extreme for my taste, which is, and it doesn't really, it has a few big companies. I think like Comcast is based in Philly and a few others, but it's its proximity to New York is a blessing and a curse that it gets overshadowed. And PA does have better taxes and better business regulations, but not enough of an edge to attract businesses away from New York yet. Philadelphia has a lower cost of living than New York or New Jersey, which should help it in the long run. Like, I think Philadelphia is like the median city in terms of cost of living. So any city that's more expensive than Philadelphia is considered high cost of living. And I think any city cheaper than Philadelphia is considered low cost of living. So if you're trying to think of like your average American city in terms of like income and cost of living, and like if you really want to see how America is kind of doing as a whole, Philadelphia might be actually a good analog. So that's my take on Philly. Like, if they, with a few reforms in their local governance, Philadelphia could be a great city again. Like, I mean, Boston would have had the same fate of Philadelphia if it wasn't for the fact they had both Harvard and MIT in its city limits. UPenn wasn't enough to carry Philly alone. Next thing is Baltimore. Baltimore is kind of a worse condition version of Philadelphia, unfortunately. And Maryland is the most progressive state politically in America, so they're unlikely to get help in terms of tax and business regulatory aid from the state level in Maryland. And so it's too close to DC for people to move to Baltimore to build its own identity, but it's too far away from DC that people can commute there with traffic in a reasonable amount of time. So, I mean, I think it's a great location. I really like Chesapeake Bay as a whole. I went fishing there years ago and it was fun. Crownsville's a really nice town. Annapolis is nice. Like I could see the appeal of Maryland. Like it, I mean, it's like it's just. I mean, I don't really wouldn't want to live in DC. It's too politics and government dominated for my taste. But and weather too. But I could see why Maryland would be a really nice place to live, and I think it does have a lot of potential, but I just don't see it being realized for a variety of reasons. Baltimore is also low key an old money city. It has a lot of old money that people don't really think of. People think of like New York and Boston as old money hubs, but Baltimore is quietly one too. Um, Puna del Este, Uruguay. Oh, I love Puna del Este. Great place. It was one of my favorite vacation places in the world. I am good. Speaking of Puna del Este, I'm going to probably be doing a special like South American, like analyzing finance with Nick Gala in either Jose Ignacio or Punta del Este in this winter in probably late February or early March. And if you'd like to reserve your spot, check out on the Eventbrite page. I highly recommend any of you guys to go down to Uruguay. It's like the Switzerland of Latin America, and it's a country on the rise that people don't really talk about that much. So yeah, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I know nothing about it. Never been. Let's see. Oklahoma City. I mean, it's natural gas is kind of a big industry driver. I don't know enough about Oklahoma City's economy. It might indirectly benefit from the growth of the Dallas Metroplex, but I'm not going to comment on it. Ann Arbor and Detroit. I mean, Ann Arbor is another college town. It's got like a similar trajectory of a place like Chapel Hill or Charlottesville, Virginia. Beyond that, I don't really have much insight. Detroit looks like it's recovering. I think it bottomed out when it went BK in the GFC, and it hit rock bottom, and I think it's starting to turn in the right direction. I think the recovery is happening, but it will be a slow one. So that's my take on Detroit. Let's see. If you're ever in Oklahoma, come to Grand Lake. Is Grand Lake near Oklahoma City, or is it closer to Tulsa? I'm curious, like where it is exactly. But yeah, I mean, there probably is some money in Oklahoma. I've never heard of Grand Lake, but if I ever do go back to Oklahoma, I'll check it out. Maybe you'll schedule a golf outing or something there. 1 hour northeast of Tulsa. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty remote. Like, what is it? What drove like people to move there? Like, what's the draw of Grand Lake, Oklahoma for wealthy people from your perspective? I'm just curious. I've never heard of this place, so feel free to talk about it more in the comments. Do you think if the UK pioneers technocracy, they could surprise everybody and end up with quite advanced society? It looks dystopian at first. I mean, I don't think using the technology to spy on and abuse your citizens is a sign of progress or to monitor their free speech. That's not really the kind of technocracy like that leads to prosperity. You need to let people have individual freedom to experiment and build things and profit off of it. That's what causes economic growth. Yeah, and I guess gigabit broadband helps, but I think a marginal increase in internet speeds is not enough to make up for the other problems that the UK has structurally, in my take. But yeah, All right, I think I'm gonna go on this. When will the enrollment cliff start impacting college towns? I think now. I think student housing outside of the Power Five UCs and Ivy League schools is going to be a dangerous thing to invest in because of this. We're already happening. I think schools are already starting to shut down. The smaller ones are merging with bigger schools. Um, so, yeah, I think that it's starting now. Is the answer to your question. It's nice seeing you in KC, by the way. Um, let's see. Where what were the biggest culture shocks in living in Philly compared to California? Do you think there's I have to do a super chat first. Do you think there will be a problem with ultra rich being above the law to an extent in this country? What can be done about it if so? I mean, there is a problem with that, but I don't think it's as bad in the US as in other countries. I mean, you see plenty of wealthy people getting jailed or getting severe legal punishment for doing things that are criminal. Uh, I don't think that I think the level of insulation of the wealthy from consequences is exaggerated to a certain degree. Um, yeah, I mean, equality under the law is very important, and I think just more transparency. And I think AI and technology be able to catch people cheating, will help with that for things, but especially things like insider trading or white collar crimes and stuff like that. I think it would be easier to track in an age of AI. I think just transparency and better tracking tools really is the solution. I mean, you can hire a good lawyer, but if you have the evidence straight in your face, you're still going to lose your case. I'm not as worried about that as other issues. And I think if people vote solely on punishing wealthy people or getting mad that they get away with doing certain things, it's not really productive. Um, let's see. Back to the question. Let's see. I was asking before. Where I lost it. What was the question? Okay. What was the biggest culture shocks living in Philly compared to California? There are two that stand out to me. One was this might have changed because I lived in Philly over a decade ago. One was the lack of gym culture. I remember I asked somebody I knew locally in town, like, what are your recommendations for the gym? And they're like, this is Philadelphia. We don't go to the gym. And I was like, wow. I think it's changed since then, but that was a kind of a culture shock for me. The second one was how obsessed Philadelphia people are with their sports teams and how loyal they are no matter how bad they are. I understand how people can like sports. Like for a large chunk of my life, I was a big Lakers and Angels fan for NBA and MLB respectively. I'd watch every game in my teens and early 20s of those two teams. Um, but however, if they were under 500 after the All-Star break, I would just be done. Like it was not worth watching a team that had no chance to they didn't have to be a championship contender. They just have to be good enough to get swept in the first round of the playoffs. For an NBA team, for a baseball team, you just had to be in the hunt for the playoffs in September. You didn't even have to be a playoff team for me to care. But that was kind of my philosophy on sports. Like if you are a playoff contender, I will watch you until you get eliminated. Basically. But for people in Philly, they thought that I was the most fair weather sports fan possible. And they're like, you are what's wrong. I'd be telling them like, Nick, you are what's wrong with sports. It's like these fair weather people who only watch when their team is winning. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot better things to do than watch a below 500 baseball or basketball team. And we didn't really have football growing up because the Rams and the Raiders both moved when I was very young. So I never got into the NFL. And hockey, I grew up in California. We had the Ducks, but it's hard to get into hockey and live in a place that doesn't snow. And so that was my take on sports. But these people in Philadelphia, they really, really, really love their Eagles. Like, I would talk to people who I knew and ask them, "Hey, what are you doing on the weekend?" Or you want to go hang out, do X, Y, and Z, and they'd be like, "You know what? That's great, but it's Sunday, and it means the Eagles." And I'm like, "The Eagles are 2-10. Who cares? And why are you still watching the Eagles?" I think they had a bad year when I was there. I don't know if they were 2-10, but they were well out of playoff contention. And it was like, yeah, that's what we do. We don't just quit like you LA people do on your sports. And so that was a huge culture shock for me. And I just noticed in general, like the Midwest, certain like Northeast cares way more about professional sports than California cities do at the same size. Like the Yankees fans care a lot more about baseball than the Dodgers fans do. The Eagles fans care a lot more about football than the Rams fans do or the 49ers fans do. San Francisco is the closest to an East Coast city in terms of in terms of West Coast sports fans. Like the Giants and Niners fans and the Warriors fans are pretty hardcore, but they're still probably light compared to their Northeastern equivalents. And then for the South, they really, really care about their college sports. Like, I heard some people who I know in the South who would watch their 2-10 Arkansas Razorbacks every game, don't care how bad they are, and they'll say like, "Yeah, if," and be like, "Well, why don't you watch a good team like USC?" And they'd be like, "USC would go 1-11 in the SEC," and I'm like, "All right, whatever." Like, um, they care. It's like it's very. They treat their sports very, very seriously, as college wise in the South. It's not comparable. And then the Midwest, they're very hardcore about college and pro sports. So either Chicago, for example, very hardcore about the Bears and the Cubs and the Bulls, and also very hardcore about all the Big Ten schools because they have alumni for all the Big Ten schools in Chicago, and they're really, really into it in a way that you don't see for Pac-12 fans or former Pac-12. 'Cause the Pac-12 no longer exists. Um, and for West Coast sports. So that's also like a travel culture shock is like the important. I thought, and I made my critique of sports call ball based on my views of West Coast sports fans. And West Coast sports fans are way more balanced in their life when it comes to this than people from other parts of the country. Um, yeah. Do you think youth sports is heading down a wrong path with pay to play system? Well, I think to a certain degree, yes, but I think parents will realize the expected value of your chances of getting a college scholarship are better versus paying for those versus putting that money into a 529 instead of a pay to play sports travel sports club is the math will be clear and people will stop doing it. Like, I don't think it makes sense to sacrifice an entire weekend with your family and spend thousands of dollars to play 1 to 2 hours away for some tournament for youth sports. It's not rational from a financial or a family perspective. Um, yeah, I see your question about my fiance's faith. I'm not going to answer any identifying questions about her just for privacy purposes. Um, I think religious compatibility is important. I wouldn't marry somebody who's not a Christian personally. So, but I'm not going to get into specific details about her specific faith on here. Um, but yeah, and I think that in general that you want to marry somebody who's um, close to you and religious. Like I think interdenominational within Christianity can work, but I think it's hard when you cross entirely different religions or lack thereof. Um, so yeah. Let's see. I've seen a video youth sports. A single mom in New York City pays $25K a year for 3 kids in youth sports. Well, I mean, again, that seems ridiculous. Like, you could probably put that money into 529s for all your kids and be able to pay for a significant chunk of, especially if you're doing that over 4 to 5 years, you'll be able to pay for their college if the goal is to do it for college scholarships. I just don't, I don't get it. Like, you can't predict that NBA thing. Maybe if you and your wife were both college level athletes and both over 6 feet tall, maybe you have a better shot at it odds wise, but you should know pretty quickly. You'll know by the time they're 8 years old whether they have pro potential or not. The people who spend the most money, and if you are that good, the coaches will recruit you and give you scholarships because they want to win, and they want you on your team because, like, you bring attention and more success. Like, it's the marginal person who might get a college scholarship if they max out their potential, and probably won't get a college scholarship, are the ones who get fleeced by these things. Again, I'm not an expert in youth or travel sports. I don't have any kids, but I've thought about it because this is something I'm going to have to consider when I do have kids. But I don't think I would do soccer or football personally. And like, so like, and the sports I would do, we'll see. It depends on their interests and their aptitude. But yeah, I mean, so that's kind of my take on travel sports. And travel sports, hey, if you have daughters, that you're not safe. Women's travel sports are a thing too, especially soccer and tennis. Um, so yeah. Do you think there are any changes the Catholic Church can make at a higher level to strengthen Catholicism in the U.S.? I have a few heterodox opinions about this, but yeah, I do think there are a few things that they can do. One, I think the church needs to do a better job in messaging how the magisterium is explained, because a lot of Americans inherently distrust Catholicism because of the fact we have ecclesiastical authority, and they think it's a lot more authoritarian than it actually is, and that papal infallibility, that whatever the Pope randomly says as a political gesture, means that that's become dogma of the faith, and it's not really true. It's a lot more nuanced than that, and I think educating better on those kind of things could push the marginal Protestant who doesn't really like um, some of the super things that are less traditional about that kind of Christianity, to get them maybe over the hump to Catholicism. But the other thing I think that the church could do in general is allow priests to get married. The reason why they were banned was because a lot of bishops and priests were turning their parishes into family businesses and personally profiting off of it. That's not really possible anymore in the modern Catholic Church and the way it's structured. And Orthodox priests do just fine being married with families. Protestant ministers do just fine being married with families. So I don't see why Catholic priests shouldn't be allowed to. And on top of that, the other advantage is that you will have probably a higher quality people, because there's a lot of people who are willing to sacrifice wealth for a spiritual path, but it's hard to expect somebody to sacrifice wealth and having a family. People can do one or the other for greater good, but it's hard to, the amount of people who are willing to do both makes it hard to the hard sell. And I think demographic decline and increased economic materialism in a lot of developed countries is going to cause a major shortage in priests. So they may have no choice but to expand the pool. Yeah. Let's see. Shout out from Montreal, 8th in Nick's heart and probably 40th in audience. I think you guys might be higher than 40th, honestly. If I look at the combined worldwide stats for Montreal, I think you guys are probably a little bit higher than that. I'm just checking through my analytics to see where you guys rank globally. So just give me a second. Like Montreal would be approximately 30th, about 30th in terms of audience. So a little bit better than 40th, but still outside the top 25. Let's see, what time is it? I mean, I've gone over 2.5 hours. I'm going to do this for about another 15 to 20 minutes. So if you want me to keep going, ask a question or leave a super chat, or just have a suggested city you want me to review. While I'm waiting for your answers, I'll just go back to more housekeeping stuff. If you like some of our bonus content, I recommend checking out our members. We just did a video about why old money is invisible. I recommend you, if you want to check it out, you got to be a member. Did you already do Houston? Greatest city in America. I have never been to, well, I've been to Houston, but I was 2 years old. So I have no living memory of Houston, Texas. I think Houston the next few years is going to have a big economic boom because of oil and a lot of the supply disruptions elsewhere in the world, and the US being a major oil exporter now. So it's going to be good times for Houston in the next few years. I think Houston has the other advantage of being a very low cost of living city. And so therefore, a lot of younger people who want to have a high paying career and big city amenities, but at a reasonable price, Houston is attractive for that. So that is my take on Houston. I hopefully will do a meetup in Houston in November, or maybe do it right during the rodeo if we can arrange something around that. If any of you guys have connections to a box and a rodeo, reach out. We might do a curated experience there. I already answered my take on Philly earlier in this live stream. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Houston. Charleston's a great city for tourism, a great city for vacation. And I would consider living there if it had a better airport. Yeah, I think it's going to be a city on the rise. I'm surprised. I guess Nashville has more business friendly and lower taxes and more land to grow out. So that's probably why it grew faster. But I think Charleston is a better city and in the South. And I think it has a lot of potential for growth. And it's a very fun place to visit. I highly recommend Charleston from a tourist perspective. What's my favorite domestic airline? I mean, I used to say JetBlue because they were the only ones that offered free Wi-Fi, but now they all offer free Wi-Fi. So I don't really have a favorite. I use American and I'm on their rewards, but that's mainly because my local airports, John Wayne and LAX, tend to have a lot of direct flights for American to places I want to go. Whereas United and Delta don't have the same coverage that I would want. And Southwest doesn't really have any international code shares. So I like the whole One World thing too. So that's why I tend to fly American now, because I've earned gold status thanks to this tour. So that's my answer on airlines. Favorite hotel chain. I generally like Marriott Bonvoy. I've had good experiences with them throughout my life, and they also have the most options. So, I mean, I've been to some of the Hyatts I've been to are also really nice. Like the Grand Hyatt in San Antonio, probably the nicest hotel gym I've ever been in. The Grand Hyatt in Zapopan in Guadalajara was one of the nicest hotels I think I've stayed at anywhere. So at the high end, some of the Hyatts are really good. too. But I think Marriott just has more locations and more options. So that's why I I've had, and it's more consistent experience than Hyatt's. Hyatt's are really good on the high end, but I think Marriott overall, like on the 3 and 4-star level, has a more consistent really experience. Do you think Dallas Fort Worth will overtake New York, Chicago as a US financial hub? No, I think Dallas is more likely to replace LA as a logistical and industrial hub, and might even replace as the second biggest city overall. Um, what's it called? Thoughts on housing booms in cities with no decent economy. Um, it means that they're either tourist sites that people like to retire in, or they're unsustainable bubbles that are likely to crash. Like a lot of these more remote vacation destinations that were really popular during COVID, once return to work mandates came back, those real estate markets got really hit really hard. Like Joshua Tree is a good example of that in California. Um, there's like Maine, some parts of Florida, like it's riskier from an investment perspective. Those places, it's usually driven either by a retirement community or Airbnbers, which that arbitrage is likely gonna fade. It's just a riskier thing to do unless if you really want to live there yourself. Um, yeah, not living in California, I clumped LA, OC, Inland Empire, but the way you talk about sound very distinct. Would you say South California is more distinct than say New York, New York? I mean, yeah, like Orange County. Like if I had to do a New York comparison, Orange County's like Fairfield County, Connecticut, but a little bit nicer. I would say it's like a more upscale version of Fairfield County, Connecticut. Um, Inland Empire is probably like New Jersey or like Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania combined, like or Trenton or Morristown, like the more further away parts from the city of New Jersey. And then like LA County outside of city Los Angeles would be like the equivalent of like the upstate New York suburbs and the New Jersey suburbs that you can get to with with direct train access to Manhattan. That'd be the best kind of comparison in terms of geography and variance, but they're very different. They're very different politically. Long Island, Suffolk County also might be similar to Orange County in some ways too, but a little bit more remote. But they're very different politically, Orange County, LA, and Riverside, and they're very different demographically and culturally too. First super chat I've ever done. If you had to pick a place to bug out, Civil War, economic collapse, or some other catastrophic event, yes, where you go? Well, it depends if it spread to Europe or not. If it didn't, I would go to Switzerland because I'm Swiss heritage. I have a Swiss passport. I love Switzerland. It's the most high social trust place on earth. It's very clean, very safe, lots of cool things to do. The only reason I'm not there is because I love America and I don't like cold weather. So that's kind of would be my first bug out place. If Switzerland's not an option, then it would probably be Uruguay or what's it called, or Chile. Um, New Zealand's probably too remote, and they wouldn't let me in anyway as a permanent resident. And Singapore is too dense. I would want a single family home level of space, and this is not viable in Singapore. But yeah, let's see. In Cayman Islands, I also thought about too, but it's too small. It's the whole island, only 60,000 people, and it's the size of my hometown, but it's the entire island. Thoughts on Vancouver? It's a nice city, very new. What's it called? It's very expensive for how low the incomes are there. I was baffled when I realized how low the pay was relative to how expensive housing was. If anywhere in Canada is unsustainable, it's Vancouver really in that way. And I don't get it. Like it's not that much better than Seattle. Like I would much rather live in Seattle than Vancouver just because of the gap in economic opportunities and housing costs. I think Vancouver is fun to visit. Um, I would like to maybe do a meetup one day in Vancouver if there are enough of you who wanted me to do it, but we don't have the numbers yet for it to make sense. Um, but yeah, I think it's kind of like I'd say a weaker economic version of Seattle with a housing market that's out of whack that might cause the city to eventually have some real trouble in the long run. North Dakota. Um, I mean, North Dakota is going to be well in the short term again because it's got oil, but I think some of it, I'm not really certain on this, but a lot of its fracking reserves were exhausted relatively early in the boom. So they might not have as much. Um, but yeah, I mean, it seems like North Dakota is generally a very well run state. And it's fairly business friendly. It's got abundance of natural resource, low population. It's actually surprisingly one of the higher income states per capita in the US. I think North Dakota is going to continue to do well. I mean, I don't know if I would live there because of the extreme cold and remoteness, but I think people who do live there will have good lives if they don't mind the cold. Thoughts on bringing down temperature politically in the US? It seems like gerrymandering wars are taking this country down a dangerous path. I mean, gerrymandering has always been a thing in American politics. That's nothing new at all. I mean, it sucks because now basically my vote in Congress doesn't matter because of gerrymandering here in California. So, like, it's pretty certain I know what party is going to win my district. But um, nevertheless, the key but I think that actually a lot of these states are at risk of dummy mandering. I think they might be overdoing it to take states. And if you have like a red or a blue wave, a lot of somewhat safe Congress congressional seats actually might flip in a surprising way. So be careful what you wish for with some of these gerrymanders. But I think the problem, if you want to bring down the temperature politically in the US, you need to increase living standards in the US and you need to have just more economic growth and access to opportunity. Like the 1990s, you had inequality relatively high, but you didn't have these issues. Like people complain that Republicans and Democrats are basically the same. I know, I was one of them. But the thing is that the reason why people didn't really care that much and were more moderate is because it's easy to be moderate when times are good and when you have stake in the system. I've noticed as I gotten older, maybe my politics has um, gotten a little bit more moderate. Not maybe because the political spectrum, my views haven't changed that much, but I think the political spectrum has shifted in a way that has forced me more closer to the center than I previously believed I was. Um, and so, yeah, but I think in general, when you have a society with more people who have more skin in the game and more economic growth, you will have moderate politics. If you want to fix the political spectrum and fix the political polarization, you need to make the cost of living lower. Deflationary economic policy, because you can't grow salaries out of this, because if you have more money chasing the same amount of goods, that's inherently inflationary. You need to do a supply side solution for prosperity. But I also think a lot of this polarization and a lot of this like negative economic sentiment might not be as bad as people say, because social media has given people that previously were silenced a voice. Like the bottom 40% of people in the class hierarchy never had a voice really in America prior to the advent of social media. Like you had media gatekeepers that basically made sure that only the curated messages got out into the public. You might have had conversations with the office cooler or in the break room or something like that, but the stuff, all these weird conversations that normally were in the office cooler or the break room or at the local pub after work are now on the internet, on Twitter, or now X, I guess, on YouTube comments and other places. And so now you're seeing the sentiment of the precariat classes that was always there, but it just was never vocalized. So, yeah, that might be it. Toronto. Okay. Well, Toronto, I appreciate my audience there. It's the third biggest city for viewers on this channel. So, thumbs up to Toronto for that. I personally, Toronto is really good for obscure ethnic food. Like if you want Portuguese food or Burmese food or Turkish food, like these more off the beaten path type countries. Toronto's a very global city. It's like the globalist capital of the world. It's the most globalist place I've ever been. It's so globalist that it doesn't really have a native, like authentic local culture. Like Chicago, New York, Tokyo, London, even though they're very cosmopolitan, San Francisco, even though they're cosmopolitan cities, LA, they have a local culture. Toronto really doesn't have a local culture. Everybody there is immigrant or first generation. It feels like you're inside like an open air version of like LAX airport or something like that. It's has a little bit of everything, but no real personality, for lack of a better term. That's my case. And that's been the case every time I've been to Toronto from 2011 to present. But I think it's gotten more so that way over time. But every time I've been to Toronto, I've had a better trip than last time. But I've also been helped the fact that I have better things to do. I know people in Toronto now, thanks to this channel and other things in my business career, which I didn't when I previously went there. Did I cover Cleveland yet? No, but I've never been to Cleveland, so I don't really know much about it. But I think Cleveland's problem is weather, and Ohio is a newly red state, but it's not red enough to be business friendly enough to have companies want to move to Cleveland. Like I know you guys in Cleveland hate the whole Joakim Noah quote that he did when he's playing against the Cavs in the playoffs, saying like nobody goes on vacation in Cleveland. He actually did. I saw on YouTube a video where he went to Cleveland and apologized about that, but he did have a point. Like I don't really, if you're not from Ohio or the Midwest, like what reason do you have to go to Cleveland? I mean, that's one reason I don't really have anything against it. It's just, it's never really been in my radar. And Cleveland is similar to like Philadelphia or New Orleans. Like it has the infrastructure to be a world-class city. I mean, a world-class city, but there needs to be like some sort of infrastructure. Like Case Western Reserve is their university, but it's not as elite as other elite universities that are the backbones of cities. It has sports teams, but that's not enough on its own. It doesn't have as many fortune as Cleveland Cliffs, but it doesn't have the corporate presence anymore. Yeah, I don't really know what I would do if I'm similar situation to Buffalo. It's like, what do you do to maintain your relevance if you're Cleveland? It's a good question. Nick, since you are a history nerd, what's it called? But I recommend reading Chad O. Jackson's work. Yeah, I've never heard of him, but I'll check it out. The camera angle is a big improvement. Thank you. But the WEA is still high. I mean, you talk about the webcam. Great audio, great talk so far. Thank you for the kind words. Let's see. Somebody asked me about another question. Puebla, Mexico. Never been, don't know enough about Puebla to really say anything about it. Dallas. I think somebody asked me about Dallas. I think Dallas could replace LA as the second biggest city in America. It's going to pass Chicago, I think, pretty soon. Dallas is just, it reminds me of LA, and it's like a Republican LA in a way, the DFW Metroplex. It's and cowboy themed. It's very sprawl. It's lots of freeways. It's got a lot of traffic at the wrong times of the day. It's like downtown is not that great, just like downtown LA. And it's got, Dallas has the best airport in terms of access to places. I think Dallas has the most places you can fly nonstop of any airport in America and maybe even the world. I think Istanbul might be ahead of it for that, but it's pretty close. So Dallas is great airport, It's a great place if you want to make money and save money and build a business. Um, and if you're a traveling salesman or business development person or somebody who has to travel a lot for work, Dallas is great because you can get anywhere in America within 3 hours and from DFW. And that is like somebody who has traveled a lot for the tour. I appreciate the value in that. I personally wouldn't live in Dallas. I don't like the extreme heat. It doesn't really have much nature really of any kind there other than maybe a few lakes. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of my take on Dallas. I think it's a great economic city. I just personally wouldn't live there. And for tourists, it needs to improve in terms. It needs to have some major tourist attraction. I think Dallas could be a good tourist place because it is kind of the Texas is becoming economically very important, but it needs some sort of draw. What's the Orange County of the South? Um, what's it called? That's a good question. Um, it have to be someplace. What's it called? When it comes to I'm trying to think. Like I think it's there's each city probably has their own version. Like when I went to the Dallas meetup, people told me that Collin County, like, would be like the Texas equivalent of Orange County, Collin County, Texas. So I think that's places like Plano or Addison or um, McKinney or Frisco would maybe be like the one for Dallas. West Palm, like Palm Beach County, Florida, would maybe the Florida equivalent of Orange County. Um, Maybe I think the northern suburbs in Atlanta, outside of like the city limits, like might be it for there. Again, I'm not really as experienced with the South as I am with other parts of the country. So take what I say with a heavy, heavy grain of salt. Has Phoenix been mentioned yet? No. I mean, I did talk about Arizona broadly. I did a whole video. Actually, somebody did ask me about Phoenix, and I shared with them my video, "The Economic Future of Arizona." So I will share that if you want my thoughts on that. Um, but um, when it comes to uh, and Arizona has lowered its state income tax, which is a good thing. But when it comes to Arizona, it's great to go in the winter. It's like one of my favorite places to spend New Year's. Um, what's it called? Yeah, I'll get to my view on gambling. I'm not really afraid to bring that topic. It's just have other things that people have asked me for, and this is kind of my travel commentary live stream. So yeah, um, but the problem is the summers are just bad in Arizona. They're brutal. It's like the inverse of like the winters in the Midwest. So I really like Scottsdale particularly. I'll probably be going to Scottsdale every year for the tour in February timeframe. We had a great meetup there in February, both this year and in last year. I like the golf there. I like the resorts there. Um, I did live in Arizona briefly when I was younger, but I think it's more of a vacation place. Um, all right, my view on gambling. Um, I personally am not a fan of gambling. I do not gamble really at all. I feel like it's a negative sum game, whereas I can participate in the financial markets for a positive sum game. I've already said I don't really like Vegas. I don't really gamble very much. Um, so yeah, I mean, what do you think of my? I don't really. Are you asking more what I think of gambling being legal or not? Is that really your question? I mean, it seems like um, I think that excessive gambling and gamification to make everything a bet is a pro drift element of society. Um, but yeah, I mean that's I mean that I haven't really fully developed my view on whether it should be banned again or not. It's something I think about from time to time. But yeah, I think gambling in general has become excessive and it's become a drag on society. It's just how do we deal with it is the question. Um, Thoughts on SSRIs? I'm generally against people using them. And if they do use them, that they should not be allowed to own weapons. Uh, that's my take on that. Are you into any collectibles or collect anything? I mean, I have some antiques that I've inherited from my grandfather, such as the mechanical bank that you see on the back shelf here. Um, and I collect experiences in a way. That's kind of what I did by traveling to all 50 states, is collecting certain life experiences and going out and doing things. I mean, I maybe I'll get back into collectibles when I have big enough of a house to store all of this stuff, but it really hasn't been a priority because I'm afraid that like I'll just lose things when I move from place to place or bigger or moving from a smaller apartment to a bigger place and city to city. I moved a lot when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and so it made me hesitant to really get all into collectibles until I'm have a permanent place that I'm living in. Um, yeah, but that's my. I used to collect the 50 state quarters when I was a kid, and but yeah, I just collectibles are not really a priority for me right now. I have my friend Ben. You've probably seen him on the channel. If you like collectibles, I recommend checking out um, my friend Ben Beery's channel, The Authentic Journey. He built a memorabilia collectibles business, so he has a lot of insight on that. Um, Nick, which suburb do you want your next house to be in? Um, well, it really depends on how well my career is advancing at the pace when I have a second kid on the way. It depends. That's kind of the met and where I will live within my area. Ideally, I would live in Newport Beach. This is my favorite. What's it called? Place to live, and it's a suburb. So yeah, ideally it would be here. I don't think I would go anywhere else. Um, but yeah, I'd be open to other parts of coastal Orange County too. How close is at San? Or you mean SNA or San Diego Airport? Oh yeah. Oh, you're talking about San Diego Airport. Yeah, San Diego is really close to downtown. And San Diego has limited flight places it can go because the airport is so constrained. Like they are building and expanding the airport in Carlsbad to kind of relieve some of that pressure. But yeah. What do you like about Newport Beach? Well, I like a lot about Newport Beach. Weather is great here. It's a very high trust community. Um, it has nice beaches. You can drive like 50 plus miles per hour consistently on the side streets without having to go on the freeway. So you could get places fairly quickly. Parking is not an issue really anywhere in Newport Beach, except if you go on the peninsula around the 4th of July. Um, it's got it doesn't have like maybe San Francisco or Chicago or New York level restaurants, but it's got good ones in the next kind of tier. And like my family is around here, and yeah, the airport access is really close. Like I could get to John Wayne in like less than 10 minutes from anywhere in Newport Beach. So that's nice. And yeah, there's you don't have to deal with a lot of the negative social consequences of bigger cities and other parts of California, and its politics is way more in line with mine than the rest of the state of California, which and value set is a lot more aligned with mine than the rest of California, which is makes it a good place to live too. So yeah, there are some downsides of Newport Beach, like particularly like if you want to be involved in like certain corners of the social scene, can be a little bit toxic. But if you're a more introverted person, that doesn't affect you as much. Like if I was a big extrovert, yeah, you would probably be frustrated with dealing with a lot of the social scene. Um, and it was not a fun place to go to high school either. But that's a whole. But overall, I really like living in Newport. It's a wonderful place. It's my favorite city in America. Um, what are your top metros for raising a Catholic family? Does it differ from your economic list? Yes, it does, because certain cities just don't have big enough of a Catholic population, and and some of the economic opportunity ones are more targeted towards singles who don't have to care about family setups. So, an example would be like, I think good places to and also it depends how big. Like if you have 5 plus kids, you probably need to skew more towards a lower cost of living place. But like, I mean, in terms of like best places, I think Orange County, California, the Diocese of Orange is one of the fastest growing Catholic dioceses in all of America. And we have a really strong Catholic community here. So I think it's a good place. San Diego is a good place if you can afford it for Catholic families as well. Um, Chicagoland is a good place. There's a lot, especially if you're a younger Catholic person and doesn't mind cold weather. Like um, that, like I think that that's a good place for like single Catholics, particularly I would say, and even for families. Um, I would, and I think also like the Collin County, Texas, like the northern suburbs of Dallas. It's where like the young Catholic professionals are based, and if it's a growing Catholic community. And there are probably places like DC suburbs also has a very vibrant Catholic community and has a lot of legal and policy focused jobs, and a lot of Catholic professionals tend to be very into the legal profession. So I would say DC. I don't really think Miami is that great of a Catholic city. I just generally don't think the South outside of Texas. I mean, and even Texas, it's mainly Dallas and San Antonio would be like the more Catholic cities. Austin doesn't have very much of a Catholic community. I'm not really sure about Houston, but yeah. And then there's, I think, like some of the suburbs of New York, probably. I don't know exactly where, but there are probably. I think there is a New York has a pretty good Catholic community as well, and I don't know where the most Catholic friendly, family friendly parts of New York are, but yeah. So I think like, but generally I would say, and then if you don't mind cold weather and you want a smaller town, I don't think Wisconsin's not a bad place either. It's a large Catholic community there. So yeah, I would say it's like Lake Michigan area of the Midwest, um, Dallas, Southern California, um, and the Northeast would probably be. I mean, I've heard good things about from my Catholic friends who moved to Atlanta about Atlanta's Catholic community, but I don't really know enough really to say. Um, can you talk sometimes about Catholicism, how you view Protestant denominations, and how the Catholic views apply to modern times? Yeah, but that'd have to be a separate. I'm not going to do that right now. That's too long of a conversation for the end of a live stream. So, yeah. But eventually, um, what are the most critical factors creating high trust communities, in your opinion? Uh, I mean, low crime, um, and there's actual and neighbors holding people directly accountable for their transgressions. That's, I think, like if you're too anonymous and too invisible, it's too easy to slip into low trust behavior. I think it's just like accountability, but not accountability that's so toxic that people are fake and create fake personas. Did you visit New Mexico? Yeah, I've been to all 50 states. I went to Santa Fe and Albuquerque. I went hot air ballooning in Albuquerque. That was fun. And I explored downtown Santa Fe, including the oldest Catholic church, I think, in America is there. And I drove through Taos as well. So yeah, I saw New Mexico. Yeah. But I will maybe I should do a Catholic live stream for next Easter. But yeah, I think I'm getting tired and I want to eat something before going to bed. But thank you guys all for joining me on today's live stream. And we'll be back with one in a couple weeks where I don't remember what the theme off the top of my head, what we're going to be talking about. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. So I will see you guys later and have a good night. And thank you guys all for watching.